Yeah, we're recording this. Is it already on? It's already together. So, yeah.
Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
Good job, guys. So give us a few minutes till we finish.
Okay, no
setting up.
problem.
Start, okay?
Okay, I put you on my TV, so after you will not see my face anymore. Is that okay?
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go.
Yeah. Llévate Penny para poder arreglar el micrófono. Stay here with Dad for a second. No, I think it's very wrong. I don't know. But I figure if they have a 20-year-old, oh my God, that's like my this. Is this without what we did? That's definitely like my friend plus 2 years. Thinking that for a while, but then apparently they were following this and they go here, wait, and they're not. So. They're 40 away.
Are you said that?
Yeah, I think I got everything. Benny,
Let's go, Penny.
you're up, Benny. Can't stay. No, because she is not gonna be so patient for so long. You seem so calm. I got something. With Sabrina that I had forgotten to. Yeah.
Anything else, Penny?
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Penny. Bye, Penny. Let's see, guys, we need. It's setting up, so.
No, you can stay there, no problem. Now, we will use one reformer and one tower to do certain exercises. I think maybe these two, right? Because I'm going to move that way would be easier, and that way we don't have to move so much. So if you don't mind setting that up as a tower, you know how to set it up? Okay. And then if you don't mind, demonstrating a few exercises here and there at some point.
Are they in all of them? All of them?
No, just those two occasionally need to sign them too.
And you put that, like all of this stuff. Different ones. No, that's fine. But I feel like so easy. I'm hearing all of them, like, okay, she knows, she gets it. You know what I mean, like when you get used to one and then you're like, okay, yeah, you get that. But you have like all the things set up to do, but I never, like, look there, you feel like a drop, like, yeah, I always miss it. Really, and then there's like, people, no, I don't even. The colors of the film, so. Do you like, the one I have, from which? It's all reset. I worked in the house and I, so like, wherever you want. I guess like went to school with. I love it. Yeah. I don't know, sports bras, I don't even have to size up. Like I get that all too restrictive, like I don't like this stupid thing. Switch. Yeah. And the tank. That one was kind of small and I feel like I would have said like I wish it size up, but not much, but leggings are there, like and the shoe size. Do you do like small print on one? Usually, but like I don't know that most.
Guys, we're giving everybody a few minutes to come in and then we'll start. Okay? So give us about 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, very much of it. Right? That color, that cherry color, to be better. So, that was just came out, right? So, the one you wore at the beginning. I think that's important. It's very cool. If you don't get it, like right when it drops, like, it's so bad. Like, that was so many good news. Okay, I don't know, right? Just go like. The ethic started off with swim. Happened like no swim. No, when I used to work there, it was like, well, that's why I actually swim. Oh, the chief one of them is from. Both of them. Oh, yeah. They so like, I don't know, like, kind of lives here, but yeah. One of it is, it's like CXP and. Well, that's all like research. Yeah, but now they do like the invisible. I don't know like the one you can see in this. It's really thin. Oh, yeah, like they're not supposed to split it, yeah. You know, the tanks, I don't know how to do that, but like, I'm like over like the tanks, like you're so tiny, like, oh, geez, like. Feel like inside that. Yeah, probably, for sure. Like a small, I'm like, okay, I used to like. Georgia, there's like jobs in school, and there's we to like turn to the most and the major I think there. And like we have really cute like. I bought a rock with them, but it's like so. They're small, right? Yeah. Like, not really like. One. Yeah, yes. Like I just like smells like them. The chocolate song again. It's like. I don't know. They're so small, but it's different people who say that it's like. I don't know, but like, there's that spot. Here, but it's like the last flower, like the weird colors, like the burgundy. Did you ever go back? I did the Aloe release, like. To Boston, they've got, give you the same. And like, oh, I got that. These ones, but I don't want these ones. How much would you give a dollar? It's a state. Like 4 or 5 days. Almost ready to. I'm like. So. Are you doing it on front camera? For when I turn it, are you doing it on front camera or on?
I don't know. What do you, I think it's front. Right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, because I want them to be able to see the.
Mr. Bones here. And then mine was back, so I really don't even see. Now,
Can I ask you something? How do I put them all? Not see one, them all. More. Yeah, that's better. That way I get an idea.
Yeah.
of Where, who's who. Okay, that way I can see them. And this guy, can you all here in the room, can you see well?
No, not well.
Not at all.
Not at all.
not at all.
No, only on the one side of the skeleton. It's not center.
Yeah, it's not center, and we see only the top body.
For now, you're gonna see the top. Yes.
No, I don't see it at all now.
Oh, you know why? You have to press that to like.
Now I see the whole.
Give us a sec, guys.
Why do you have your camera set to that? More
I don't know, this isn't on my end.
audio settings. Ooh.
Background.
Background? No. No. Cause it's going to move with you right now. Yeah, it zooms in on you. I feel like, Victoria, do you know how to switch it in a Zoom meeting so that the camera doesn't follow you?
What do you mean, so there doesn't follow?
Center
Like
stage?
right now?
What if we take that out?
Oh,
Now it doesn't, it was center stage. I think that's what it is.
Now I see
Good.
it.
Now you can see it, right? Yeah.
And you want to ask people.
I see it, but we don't see the feet. That's the only thing we don't see.
Yeah, we won't start there, don't worry.
But yeah,
We'll move it
Okay.
when we get there.
no, you're
Now, if you all guys could mute yourself, that would be
Yes.
great.
Okay.
If you have any questions, let us know though, okay? Okay. Well, let's get started everybody. Welcome, happy you okay, and then my girls from the common, glad you're here taking this workshop. So for those who don't know me, I'm Andreina. I'm a teacher trainer for classical Pilates education for a few years now. Pilates instructor, obviously, a physical therapist. My specialization in PT is intensive care neurology and ACL replacements in knee. So today we'll be talking about anatomy, movement and anatomy for Pilates, specifically for us as instructors, okay? So I wanted to give you a little bit of the introduction of what you would be seeing today. We're going to talk about from the very basic all the way to multitudes and different movements that we do in Pilates. That will help you not only understand movement, but it will help you understand how to create lesson plans, how to make them effective. So if we come to the basics of what we want in our clients, let's talk about one client or a whole class. What we're looking for is always a workout that is first safe, it's efficient, and it's fun. But to make it safe and make it efficient, we need to know what we're working with, right? So we might know all the technicalities of movement and know all our orders and all our rhythms and how to talk in a perfect class and how to have voice projection. But if we don't know exactly what's moving and why and how to move it correctly and how to make it more efficient, then, you know, we're just repeating with no real structure. So that's the reason why I'm so glad you're taking this workshop and you kind of educate yourselves a little bit more. We're not going deep into every inch of the body, but we're definitely going to talk about biomechanics, a little bit of kinesiology, certain muscles, our skeleton, and then principles of movement. Has any, or any one of you guys here studied anatomy before in any way, shape, or form? You have actually? Okay, great. Okay, great. It's always a good refresher, because I'm sure you all know what I'm gonna be talking about here today. But it's just like refreshing and taking it a little bit more structure to our craft. So we're gonna start with the very basics. I gave you a handout here. We're gonna be following that. And I suggest take notes. If you have any questions, let's go about them as we go. I don't need you to have me wait to like finish the whole thing and then you ask questions. I'd rather we actually talk during it. So just raise your hand and we'll go ahead and start answering questions. Okay? So let me grab this well one of the handouts since I have it in the computer. I don't see it visible. Okay. Okay. I'm also gonna ask you guys to read a little bit, so I'm not talking all the time and it doesn't get too intense with me talking. Victoria, would you mind starting with, just reading us the intro?
Welcome to Anatomy for Pilates, a comprehensive guide designed to deepen your understanding of the human body and its application to Pilates practice. Anatomy is the foundation of Pilates, providing the knowledge needed to enhance alignment, engage the core effectively, and prevent injuries. By exploring the musculoskeletal, nervous, and respiratory systems, this guide connects the principles of Pilates to the mechanics of movement. Whether you're an instructor, practitioner, or enthusiast, this resource will empower you to find a stronger mind-body connection, ensuring safe and effective practice for all.
Now, we're gonna start talking about the skeletal system. That's your next page in your handout, where it says it forms a structural framework of the body by supporting movement, compromised by bone joints and connective tissue. So, being the skeleton or framework and where we're gonna start. Bones connect through joints, and in Pilates is the key for alignment and healing. So as much as we all know our skeleton, we'll do a quick review. Just because I want you to think of bones as your points of where you're seeing the alignment in the body of your clients and how you do those cues. If you are classically trained in our manual, you have very specific cues. And those cues are always 100%, they're always going to work. You're never going to be cueing the wrong thing. But I also would love for you to start incorporating cues that come from what you're seeing in the body that is moving. I want to encourage you that when you teach, you look at your body, you look or at your client, how they are moving, what is the alignment happening. Now, if we can do a little demonstration here, do you mind coming up to your knees? Jazz, can I ask you to move it just a little bit? Okay, so place your feet against the blocks. And I'm gonna ask you to hold on to these straps. So sit on your heels, grab the long loops on your hands. And carefully don't lose balance. You're gonna come up to your knees how you were a second ago. Okay, now in this position, the first thing you want to do is look at alignment and look what's happening in the body. Her shoulders, her hips, and her knees should be aligned. Are you able to see the body there, guys? Yeah. Okay. So you have to look to her from the side. If I look from the back, if I look from the front, I'm really not seeing if the alignment is in the right place. That's where her center of gravity is. The moment I asked her to do the movement, which is bringing her arms up, she needs a lot of balance to do this, and then resist the movement down. If she were to have, be careful with this one, bring your shoulders forward, and then do the movement, that's a completely different movement. Her balance is not the same. She's strong, so she can do it. If you bring your shoulders behind you and you do the same movement, she's on the wrong places. She's gonna be on her lower back. So finding the alignment of where your body is, depending on the movements that you learn, is key. And for that, you need to know what the bones are, where they are, okay? So,
Going back to Mr. Bones here.
when you see a skeleton, it's what we call anatomical position. It's what we call a neutral position of the body. So it's where your joints are aligned in the best possible way for your body. If we were perfect bodies, we would have the alignment that he has. Okay, so meaning, if I'm in an anatomical position like a skeleton, all my tendons and all my muscles
Are completely relaxed. There's no inflammation happening.
there is no contractions happening. So my joints are the best where they need to be. That is proper alignment. Of course, your alignment is gonna change depending on the movement that you're creating. But this is where you wanna take them. This is where when your client stands up and leaves the room, that's our objective. For them to have an anatomical position where your pelvis is neutral, where your chest is open, your neck is long. So, based on that, let's do a little quick review of the bones. So, in your handout, you have a little picture of your skeleton. And if you go to page, I want to say, it's on page 2. No, it's page 3, that's where the picture is. Okay. Bones, you have different types of bones. It's just important for us to know, just to know what we're dealing with. You have long bones, which could be something like your femur, like the leg bone. You have short bones, like the bones on your hands or your feet, your carpals and your tarsals. Those are considered short bones. Flat bones, it's a bone that's obviously flat, like somebody can give me an example of what you feel that would be here, a flat bone. It could be pelvis, it could be sternum, scapula. Good one. Irregular bones are bones that are not with a long bone, with a long body like this one, so such as your vertebrae. And sesamoid, it's a very particular little bone that's just there for a function. So in this case, your patella down here on your knees. So those are the kinds of bones, just important for you to know as general knowledge. Now, the structure of a bone is dense, porous, and it's covered by a very specific membrane. It's a vascular membrane. It produces marrow, and the marrow produces blood cells. So your bones need to be healthy, oxygenated. Movement provides that oxygenation for your bones. So when we're here as Pilates instructors, I know we are usually thinking more about the workout and the muscle, which is the right thing to do. But always think you're always oxygenating the whole body. You're starting by the very basic, which is your bones. Sending oxygen, sending information, producing blood vessel, yeah. Now, bones have landmarks. Specific, when you see a skeleton like this one and you see drawings, red, blue drawings on them, those are specific landmarks you're gonna find in the bone to see where the muscle inserts and where it's producing, where it comes from the origin. So a muscle goes to 2 joints, connect them, and produces movement, or maybe just 1 joint, right? So for example, I'll give you a simple example with your quads. Your quadriceps are the big, long muscles in the front of your thigh. And they connect and they go from up in the hip area down to the knee area, so they're connecting. There is an origin and an insertion. And in every one, each one of us, it's the same origin and the same insertion. There's a bony landmark that determines where that muscle is going to be attached. The muscle attached to the bone through tendons. So your tendons, similar to the muscle, are also made out of collagen. But the tendon acts as a tape. So I want you to think the muscle ends in the tendon attaches to the bone. Therefore, when there's inflammation on the muscle, when we as instructors overwork the muscle in our client, probably a tendinitis starts happening. So the tendon gets inflammation, and then there's pain, and then there's another set of issues there, right? But the tendon attached to the muscle, they talk to each other. So whatever we do as instructors related to the muscle group, it'll affect the tendons in your body of your client. So that's how your muscles attach, and that's how they are relevant. Now, to study your skeleton, we have two kinds of skeletal, the axial and the appendicular. That's how we talk about it in our anatomy to be able to learn about that. The axial is composed by your skull, vertebral column, rib cage, and it's key for spine alignment and for Pilates. Why would this appendicular skeleton be key for us as well as instructors? So I'm talking about axial skeleton being this center of the body. Why is that key for us? So, say that again? For alignment, and because this is the area of your powerhouse. Do you know the concept of powerhouse? So the powerhouse is the area between your shoulders and your hips, your abs, your spinal system, right? Your vertebral column, and your organs inside this area of your body, which are your vital organs, your heart, your lung, your muscle for breathing, your diaphragm. So all where the movement starts, where life starts, where life begins, that's your powerhouse. So that is in anatomy, your axial skeleton. Then you have your appendicular skeleton, that's as easy as your limbs, your upper limbs and your lower limbs, arms and legs. Okay, so that's how you divide a skeleton when you talk in anatomy. And it's just good to know, just for reference, if you're reading and going into a little bit more studying of it and you see those terms, you'll understand what they mean. Any questions so far? Okay, let's keep going. Now, let's talk a little bit about joints and biomechanics of those joints. It's essential to understand how your joints work in order to understand movement, right? And how to not overwork a joint. Now, they vary and they have different structures and different functions, and that's how we classify the different joints. So, how do we determine it? We determine the joints depending on the range of motion. So, depending on what kind they are, they'll have more or less range of motion. One key principle in Pilates is we respect the range of motion of the joints. We do not overstretch, and we don't try to go beyond the range of motion. So if your shoulder, which is a joint that has all the movement and it's a very movable joint, if it has full range of motion, we work with that. If it's compromised and it has a specific range of motion for whatever reason in your client, you respect that you only go there. So in other practices, let's say yoga, we go a little bit deeper, we stretch a little bit more, we might go even further than the range of motion allowed. Because that's that system. In this system, we go just with the range of motion that your joint gives you to work with. So we never overstretch. That's the beauty of the springs in Pilates. Using springs in all of our apparatuses is what's going to control the range of motion you're using. Okay? That is key to having a very healthy workout for your client. That's why it's so safe. Now, let's talk a little bit and have that in your handout of the different kinds of joints. Synovial ones, those are the movement ones. Those are the ones most relevant probably to us in our practice. Now, because they have movement, I want you to think in practical terms. Anything that moves needs to be lubricated. Needs to have, let's talk about these towers that you have here. In order for them, for those springs to move correctly, for the reformer to move correctly, you need, let's say, oil in them, right? It's the same as our joints. They have synovial fluid, therefore named synovial joints. And the more we move them, the more this we stimulate the synovial production. So let me give you an example. Can I use you an example of the time? Thank you. So I'll give you a very clear example. The hip is one of the joints that you need to lubricate the most. If you lay down, I'm going to have you do a very simple one-leg circle. So extend your legs, no, just extend them over the bar as if it were a mat. And rest them all the way down. Now lift your right leg up to the ceiling. All the way to 90. I want you to cross the midline, go out a little, stop at the center. Do that movement. You go in, out a little, stop at the center. That's your one-leg circle, right? Very simple movement. What she's doing is moving the hip, lubricating the hip. Thank you. Now that exercise is in your mat order of classical Pilates, in your beginner system, intermediate, advanced, all the time. Why? And it's towards the beginning of the session. Because the first thing you want to do is not only open the hip, you want to lubricate the hip. You want to keep it movable. When I teach that in class, it's supposed to be a very structured exercise, right? Out a little, bigger cross up at the center. But sometimes if you go a little bit deeper and make them do a bigger circle, they're cleaning the hip even more. Then it turns into a different exercise. It's no longer a one-leg circle, but it's doing that event of lubricating and producing more synovial liquid into your joint. What will that do eventually when I ask her to do stronger exercises? Let's say just a simple ab work. Let's do a double leg stretch. Bend your knees into the chest. Lift your head, neck, and shoulders. Now hold on to the ankles with your hands. On the inhale, extend your arms and legs away from each other. On the exhale, circle the arms and hug the knees back in. Do that again. Go out, you exhale, you bring it home. One more time. And rest it out. So she started moving her hips a little bit more aggressively. But she already created movement. I already created a little bit of lubrication in the hip. Her hips are ready to ask for more. So important your synovial joints to keep them lubricated and movement. Thank you. There, hence why nowadays in fitness, we go by trends, right? And we had many years ago, it was the words coming trend. So many years ago, it was sculpting. We would sculpt everything. Then after that, it was, bouncing. Then it was certain terms. The term nowadays is mobility. So if you go online and you look for workshops, all the workshops will be related to mobility. Because all of a sudden we realize that we need mobility in the joints. We need to produce synovial fluid in order to create better movement. So now we do workshops in mobility and then we do workshops in fitness. So, but the beauty of the line is that your mobility is already incorporated in all the movements we do. Okay, any questions with those kinds of joints?
Yes, so you literally saying that, for example, the leg circle, literally our body produces some type of
Synovial joint. Synovial fluid.
So there's more fluid.
Fluid, yes. Okay, so of those synovial joints, you have different kinds of joints. You have the hinge joint. So the hinge would be, I'm gonna take you back. I'm gonna take you back to skeleton. I would be a knee, which is a very simple bending and extending, right? Very simple movement. that would be your hinge. Your ball and socket is your joint that has the most movement because there's a ball and a socket. So your hip, in this case, femur against pelvis, that will be your ball and socket. It moves flexion, extension, internal rotation, external rotation, adduction, and abduction. It has all the movements. And therefore, always remember as instructors, the more movement a joint has, the more prone to injury. So what are the most injuries you're going to see in your clients? Hips, shoulders, movable joints. The pivot rotation is it pivots. So think of your skull up here. C1 with the skull, that movement, that pivot movement, that's a pivot joint. We don't have many of those, just a few. Cartilaginous, I will never be able to say that word perfectly. Pero en español, cartilaginosa. There's slight movement there, not a lot. So for us, relevant of this joint will be your disc. You enter an intervertebral disc, and we'll talk more about these in a second. So these have movement, but not too much, just small movements. And the last one, which is not really relevant to us, is a fibrous joint. So that just is something that doesn't really move, it only moves at certain times in our lives. So you have those joints up here in your skull. So in your babies, it's very movable to create space for the brain to grow. And then it calcifies and no longer moves and it's steady. Also for us women to give birth, these lower joints here in your pubic area will open up for you to be able to give birth, and then they go back to its original position. It's very smart parts. Okay, so some joints have movements while others need stability. And that protects them against injuries. Pilates specifically respects these functions. So let's do another example of what I'm talking about. We have joints that move while we're doing a Pilates movement, and others that anchor your body. Think of them as anchor points. Those are more important because those are going to keep the stability of the movement. So if I ask my mom, we're here to lay down again and do a single leg stretch. So you're laying down, bend both knees into the chest so they can see it. Lift your head, neck, and shoulders. Place both hands in one knee, extend the other leg. And then you switch and switch and switch. So as you see, let's hold it here. So she's moving, but her pelvis is steady. There's no rocking back and forth. It's a steady pelvis. That one hip is completely stable as the other one moves. That's your anchor point. And then she switches, you're moving the other, anchoring the opposite. Thank you. So in Pilates system, classical, contemporary, wherever it is, you're always going to have an anchor point of joints and then the others that move. And for you as instructors, cue the anchor points. If you're doing a bridge, can everybody picture a bridge in their head? What are the anchor points in a bridge? Feet. Okay. And shoulder blades, right? 4 anchor points, 2 shoulder blades, 2 feet. In the center of that, you have your glutes, you're lifting them, you're squeezing them, and you have your person in a bridge. Now, those 4 anchor points, you have to cue them to make sure everything is stable. So those would be the joints that are stable for you in that example. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, mobility, which I kind of mentioned a little bit before. Important to work mobility, always respecting range of motion. Use your props. So that's where props come in. Props are great, absolutely great, to make the exercises more fun and a little bit more challenging. But they're also very useful to be able to respect the range of motion and to help with those anchor points. So maybe you're working on a C curve and that lower back is not feeling great. A ball behind the core support will make all those joints in your lower back nice and steady because they're supported. So use your props in order to help the anchor points. Questions there? Let's talk a little bit about biomechanics, which I think in your handout. What page is it? Okay, is everybody there? Okay. We study movement, right? In order to make what we said at the beginning, controlled and safe, effective and challenging. Now, I want you to think of your body as a system as levers and bones. So bones are your levers, joints act as pivots, and muscles will produce the force. You need all of that system in order to produce movement. Now, what does Pilates use? Aside from body weight to help you, it uses springs, gravity. All of those produce resistance, and then your muscle produces strength. Now, reformers, for example, they use springs. Let's talk about footwork. Can everybody picture footwork? It's an easy series to kind of get into your brain, right? You have your feet at the bar, you have a loaded spring load, probably 4 springs there to start your footwork. The way you resist the movement to come in, you're pulling your abs in and up so that reformer doesn't bang and close too quick. Otherwise, we're thinking outside something else and you just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The resistance of yourself coming into the body, into closing this reformer, that's where you start finding how to control the force in your muscles. Does that make sense? So when you're cueing footwork, that's the first part of your class. That's where you start engaging your client to move consciously. Another example of moving consciously could be your teaser. You teaser up, but then where's the magic of the teaser? Is when you come down. It's how slow and controlled you go down. You have a teaser, you have the feet, the eyes at the same level, they should go down to the mat at the same level at the same time. Because you're controlling that force of gravity, you're going against it, you're teasing gravity. Hence the name of the teaser. Okay. One main thing about movement in Pilates is the control of the muscle, but that produces the grace of the movement. That's why the movements are so great, right? Because you're moving strongly, you have springs, you go up, you're up in the reformer, you're doing balancing work, you're doing crazy work, but it's how graceful you come down strongly from those movements that control it. That's where the magic happens. And that's where muscle contractions come into play. Now, muscle contractions for you are the key of how you're creating lesson plans and how you're creating and doing the movements. 3 main types. Concentric contraction. That's the easiest. So if I'm doing bicep work, and I'm just bringing my hand to my shoulder, and I'm working the bicep, the muscle fibers are contracting, they're getting shorter. So the bicep goes from the femur, from one joint to the other, right? From the shoulder to the elbow. So if I make it shorter, it's a concentric contraction. If making it shorter is a concentric, an eccentric contraction will be what? The opposite. You're lengthening, right? So let's keep talking about the arm. You squeeze the bicep to get it in. You go out, the extension of the tricep is going to happen. Quite the opposite. Now, Pilates works with eccentric contractions quite a bit in most of our movements. That description of a long lean muscle comes from the eccentric contraction. So when you're doing lesson plans and you're doing lots of bicep work, then you have to find the opposite to work the eccentric contraction of the bicep, so the muscle is completely balanced out. Another good example, perfect example of an eccentric contraction is the teaser. So who has a great teaser?
Victoria.
No.
Yeah.
I need a teaser. You don't have to be strapped or anything. Set your legs. Teaser yourself up, chin to chest, and don't teaser up. Woo! Now I'm making your dentist straight. There you go. Bring it up. Hold, no, you're too far. Come all the way in. A little bit more in. No, the other way. Bend your knees into the chest. Tease yourself up in there. Pop. Find it. Over the chest. Now. You got it, right? The magic is on the way down. So start teasing yourself down. No one by now. Those abs are stretching as they contract. Thank you. So that was hard work. Too shaking to go down. Her abs were eccentrically contracting in order to control the way down. When she came up and the abs were shortening, it was a concentric contraction. So what will Pilates do? It'll combine both contractions. That's why your body is so balanced out after a good Pilates session. You have a third contraction, which is your isometric. That means that muscle does not contract, does not extend. It's just an absolute contraction, but it doesn't shorten and doesn't extend. Can somebody give me an example of an eccentric contraction? Isometric contraction. Plank. Another one, key exercise for us in classical. Come on, girls, at the beginning of an order of classical Pilates, old school. 100. That's your classical, plank and 100 are your two very isometric contractions of the core. Why is the isometric so important? Stabilizes in a safe way. So any injury or we're not so sure what we can do with that person, the isometric will be safe and it'll make them work the muscles 100%. So let's say herniated disc. They walked in the door because their doctor said, you better go do Pilates to have a very strong core, so you're not suffering any longer from your lower back. But if I start doing an ab series, I'm gonna be really moving that lower back. That's not a safe way. What's the safest way to work the contraction of the core for that client? Isometric contractions. So planking, 100, bridging, anything that holds the contraction just as effectively as doing a 5 series ab exercise. Okay, so always keep it in your toolbox. When you have injuries and you're not so sure about what to do and what not to do, you know that will be safe and your client will be completely safe. So that's very important to know the different kinds of contractions in order to be able to create your lesson plans. When you're creating lesson plans, and sometimes, we want a little bit more creativity into them, right? We want to make them a little bit more fun. But always, once you have your lesson plan in your head, and it looks good for you, then think, okay, wait, what am I working here? What am I working arms? What am I working in the arms? Is it all bicep here all the time? And then this is gonna happen, and then there's a lot of shortening. I need to extend and do some eccentric contraction. Then let me work some chest expansion. Let me work some opening, some extensions of the back. So work the oppositional. If you're working a lot of core in a class, you need extensions after. You don't want your client ending like this. You want everybody to walk out of this class in a beautiful posture and a better alignment than when they walked in. And that's on you, on your lesson, right? Any questions with contractions? Yeah.
So the example you gave, when if you wanted to give somebody with a herniation, you feel like it's everybody. If you wanted to give them an isometric exercise and you wanted them to bridge, in that example, somebody was having pain from their herniation, would be better to be holding the bridge versus spinal articulation, or the full kind of range of motion?
Those final articulations.
Those spinal articulations, just come into the bridge, hold the bridge.
Yes.
And then how about like adding any kind of like layers to that, like single leg or anything?
You can start with marching the legs, right, and see if the pelvis is still stable while we march the legs. Then maybe if that's working, then okay, let me take the leg up to the ceiling, see what happens. If they're still stable, maybe kicking down and up, so you kind of test it. But what you're looking for is a stable pelvis. The minute that you see that there's anterior posterior tilt, or one hip higher than the other.
So like in general, like I feel like I always teach spinal articulation in the bridge, it's sort of like footwork and then that's.
Yeah, me too.
And I always give people the option, pre-runs brings a little more support, and if you were somebody who's like a jet set lover and you want to red and blue, like to make it a little bit more challenging.
Right.
But when I think in terms of how many people compensate with that, when they're saying that they want that pain, is it better to just potentially like ditch the spinal articulation, because I spend a lot of time here.
No. So, two things on that question. Protect yourself and ask your clients when they walk in, hey, any injuries I should know about? That's always the same question, because if they say herniated disc, then, then the articulation, you can kind of maybe not go there. But if you're not sure, you forgot to ask, whatever the case, don't necessarily do articulation, maybe just go up, squeeze seat. The more squeeze your glute, the more protected the lower back is going to be. Okay? And if you want to make it safe, add strengths, make them 2-3 strengths. Because then you're safe, then you know.
When would you, like you said, a lot of people have herniations, when would you bring them into articulation? They work on genetics, it's never okay to do.
Well, rule of thumb, a herniated disc. Think of 6 weeks. So if that herniated disc happened within the past 6 weeks, they really shouldn't be perfect. So not forever and ever.
I feel like it's always like old school.
Right.
It's always like a 10 years ago.
You're good.
Or-
You're good. You're completely good.
Like,
And then, but it's like that, it happens. So, few months, years ago. They're good, but they're always mindful of it, they're fine, they can do more. But if it's recent, don't even have them come, like 6 weeks, they're not ready to come. Don't, because it's for you, it's on you.
Since I have you here, on that, I always do bridges on the heels, it feels better in my body, but I'm thinking about that, especially kind of as it does to people like dumping into their lower back and not being mindful of squeezing the glute.
Okay, that's a good question. So for bridging as well as other exercises, we talked about anchor points. We said in bridging, your feet are anchor points. Depending on the foot positioning, the bridge is easier or harder. Heels would be the easiest and would be the most stable. Arches, middle of the vein, everybody's comfortable there. Tippy toes is the hardest. And it all depends because of the muscles that are engaged in your leg. So sometimes I even in class, I have them do the 3 positions in the bridge and then have them choose what works best. Or depends how I see the group. In a bridge, you always have to also assess. If people complain about cramping, my hamstrings are cramping, I'm dying. That's not the hamstrings, it's just a weak glute area. So they need more strength, they need to be on heels, and they need to work glutes, and you need to add a glute work in your repertoire.
In the reformer, this is assuming foot bar, do you also bring them down to the platform as a modification?
Yes, you can do it lower,
That's,
that helps a lot, easier, yes. Absolutely.
is there any?
That's why in your classical order. Pelvic lift at the end of this order is a beautiful way to start understanding where the bridge is gonna come up further on your client's development, yeah.
Is there any contraindication to isometric contraction? Like, is there anybody that shouldn't do it, or is it really just like it's safe, literally safer anyways?
Safe for anybody. So in PT world, that's what we use. We use isometric contractions left and right all the time, because that's what safe is. So, and that's the beauty of all your classical exercises, right? We started with the 100 at the beginning of your session, because that's the safest one, to work the abs, to warm it up, oxygenate the area, and then start the crazy stuff. Start there. Any more questions there?
And one more.
Yep.
I definitely the.
No, ask all you want to ask.
Twice a week for like 4 months. Okay, and she is evidently not an alcoholic, but also in the neighborhood. So like she will always, while we're bridging, complain that she got horrific cramping. And then I'll be like, as a joke, kind of, drink last night, so then say, oh, okay, what do you do that?
Most likely.
Like they don't go through that, but she's still coming, but like, so in her example, like that's always. Like what would be a good kind of like addition, I always have her bringing on 3 reds, which I feel like a lot, should I give her an extra one?
So have a bridge, not a reformer, on mat, like put in the tower and feet on mat, not lift. Do you feel it? Is it? Say a little bit more hydration can definitely help. Okay, I want to know, just as general knowledge, guys, a little bit of anatomical terminology, and we'll start on bones and muscles in a quick, like I promise, we're getting there. Now, anatomical terminology, important for you to know it, just to know it as general knowledge to understand it, yeah? So, it's terms, it's landmarks, everything that ensures that your framework as a Pilates teacher is consistent. You always want to know what you're cueing in a consistent way. So, directional terms, position, orientation of body parts relative to each other. It's a universal language of anatomy. Let's talk very simple. If somebody, let me use somebody else. Can somebody just stand here so I can use you as a model? Okay. No, it could be in. That's okay, so to me, to be able to have language of where things are, where the body is moving. So we have anterior and posterior. You've all heard terms of anterior chain and posterior chain. Anterior chain are all the muscles in the front of her body. Posterior chain, the muscles in the back of her body. Now, you can hold on if you need to, but I want you to do a kick, like so, like a side kick that we did yesterday. Good, sorry. So if you hold your leg up, her anterior chain is contracted, her hip flexor is working, her posterior chain, which is her glute, is stretching. And then when she takes that leg back, it's opposite. Posterior chain is active, the glute is contracted, her hip flexor is stretching. So if I'm doing this simple movement, I want to do it with enough range of motion that she can get benefits of posterior and anterior chain in the movement. So when you're doing kicks, they have to work the front, they have to work the back. So you have to make them efficient. Now, medial and lateral. Medial means you can stand anywhere you want, at least for them to see you, right? If you open the leg to the side and then bring it back in. For bringing it back in, everything coming to the midline is medial. Everything going out is lateral. So that's not only to movement, but of body parts. So I would say her shoulder is lateral, her sternum is medial. So if you hear the terms, you know that medial is anything to the center of her body, lateral, everything outside of her body. Proximal and distal. That's a very important term in Pilates world. Proximal, closer to the center of the body, to your powerhouse. Distal, further away. So her head and her feet are distal. Let's say her knees are more proximal. That's important for us of how we start movement. Okay, we start from proximal to distal. What does that mean? You can stand up.
Can you repeat what's possible?
Proximal is closer to the center of the body, distal is further away. Can I use you again? Set up 100 for a beginner, please. So you don't have to use straps, you can use it, just use your body like as if it were a mat. Good. This is a beginner person doing 100. Everything is very proximal to the body. Now, as I progress my client into an intermediate and advanced client, intermediate is extending the legs more distal, further away, opening the range of motion. Maybe more advanced, I'm going to bring her 2 inches off the mat. Very distal, away from each other. Thank you. That is harder. Everything distal is harder on your body. It's more active. It's stronger, more muscle, heavier. Your legs are going to be heavier when they're extended than when they're bent. Hence, more distal, more advanced. Your exercises, you have to think of them like that. You have to think of progressing your client from a proximal movement to more distal movement. Any questions on that? That's important for you to be aware when you're doing movements and creating movements. Okay, movement planes. 3D directions, 3-dimension directions of Pilates exercises occur in more than one plane to promote balance, strength, flexibility, and coordination. So, in Pilates exercises, like the real ones, not the ones we make up, the real old school exercises, those are created in all planes. Sagittal, transversal, all the planes. That's why they're so effective. Hence, when you are creating exercises, let's say you started working in the reformer one day and you decided to take a couple hours to kind of get a little bit more creative with movements. Try to mimic that. Try to find that new movement that is moving in all planes. And let's understand what those planes are. Sagittal, now I need another person to stand down. Someone standing here as a model. Okay. Okay. So you have, I think you have a little picture there in your handout, right? Yeah. Okay, so the first one is your sagittal plane. It divides your body in left and right. Meaning that the movements in sagittal plane are forward and back. So extend the arms up, roll yourself down, roll yourself up, deepen the abs to coming up, head comes up last. That is a movement in a sagittal plane. A roll up, it's also a sagittal plane. A swan extension is sagittal plane. Frontal plane, it divides the body in front and back. So imagine I put a line here and divide you in front and back. So the movements are going to be side to side movements. So, for example, adduction and abduction of the legs. So kick the leg to the side. That is a movement in your frontal plane. Okay? Thank you. And transverse plane. The transverse divides your body in upper and lower. So the movements are going to be rotational movements. So let's say spine twist or saw or anything, if you put your hands back, keep your hips steady and rotate towards the front door, keeping the hips steady and then to the other side. That will be a rotational movement that occurs in transverse plane. Can you give an idea? So when you're doing a beautiful lesson plan for your clients, take that into consideration. It's I-1 movements in all the planes. Because Pilates, guys, it's a neurological system. It's not just the movement of the muscles. It's neurologically speaking to your body. So you want to work your clients in all planes, having your brain in line with movements. Okay. So we mentioned a little bit about the bony landmarks at the beginning. Now let's get into it. Okay. Going back to Mr. Bones. Let's do a quick review of your bones. Okay? We're not going to talk about all of them, it's a lot. But you have the skull, the ribs, clavicle, shoulder blades, vertebrae, spine, vertebral column, 33 vertebrae. Vertebra is one, vertebrae is many. There's no S. Now, this is her base of movement. This is what Joseph loved. This is what Joseph showed us and told us that we're only as young as our spine is flexible, right? So this is what we focus on. So let's learn a little bit more about it. 7 cervical vertebrae from C1 to C7. If you all touch a little bit of the dent that you have here at the base where your neck starts, there's a little bone that kind of stands out a little bit at this level. That is your C7. That is where the cervical spine ends. Okay? Cervical spine is an area of your spine that has a lot of movement. It has rotation, flexion, bending, forward and back. Therefore, the more movement, the more injury. For us, the Pilates instructor, our neck is clean. You have a new client, you're showing them abs, and the first thing they're going to complain about is my neck hurts. Because it takes a little bit of time to get it strong. So, neck in line with the spine. That is your safest way to work the neck. When you are setting up your client for any exercise, you have to tell them where to look, where to take their eyesight, so you know the neck is in the proper way. You have to be careful. Overflexing is dangerous. If you have an osteoporosis spine, osteopenia, this flexion is not great. Overextension when they're doing swans, they're not doing a proper swan. The swan is not from the neck. They're not doing a proper extension. You don't want that. But if I tell my client here to, hey, keep your neck in line with the spine, they have no clue what I'm saying. Because even for me, I'm like, is it in line with my spine? Like, tell them where to look. So if they're doing, let's set up this system, because if I'm having so uncomfortable on the reformer, let's do this.
Sorry, guys.
Be fair. Can you lay down the abdominals on the neck? Okay, hands underneath your shoulders. Good. And now press yourself up a few inches. Shoulders back. Look forward a little bit more. So her neck here is too extended. If I wanted a line of the spine, I would tell her, please look to where that gray bar is. Immediately her head went down a few degrees. Now her neck is in line with her spine. Bring it all the way down. Now bring one hand over the other, create a pillow with your hands for your forehead. Can you guys see it? I guess I can. Okay, now from here, you squeeze here, you press your hips down. Now bring your chest up, keep the forehead and the hands glued, and bring the whole shape up. See how her head is in line? That's how it should be every time she does an extension. So she's working from the shoulder blade area and from her lower back area, not from her neck. Build it up. Thank you, test it out. So cue where the neck goes. Cue the eyesight, that's what's gonna take the neck to the proper place. After that, you have your thoracic spine. Your thoracic spine are the next vertebrae. See if you have it. See if I put it here for you, say that you have that pages in front of you. And got it. Went over, okay. All the way to D12. So thoracic vertebrae are attached to your ribs. Therefore, there's really not a lot of movement in that area of your spine, therefore less injury. You have very big back muscles around it, so it's a very safe area of the spine to work. Lastly, your lumbar spine. Those are all your vertebrae all the way until your sacrum. From L1 to L5 over here. Now this one, also that area of your spine has a lot of movement, very prone to injury, and very prone to herniated discs. So what's the disc? In between each one of these vertebrae, you have your disc. Your disc is made out of fibrous structure, so it's very squishy. It's almost like a little cushion. And it absorbs all the shock of our everyday life, of our walking, our jumping. It avoids the bone-to-bone connection. That disc might move sometimes. Inside your vertebral column, you have your spinal cord. The spinal cord is all the nervous system information. Those nerves that come from your spinal cord come out your spine. They go to specific muscles to make those muscles move, to make them work. They also bring information of pain and information of sensation, cold, hot, etc. So if any of those nerves are affected, let's say you have a specific nerve, let's call it the sciatic nerve. And the sciatic nerve has been affected because this disc here on L4 moved and it's pressing against the nerve. And because it's pressing against it, it's causing inflammation in the nerve. Therefore, all the muscles that sciatic nerve goes to are being affected. Let's start by the muscles on your feet. Sciatic nerve will do this to your foot. It'll help flex. It'll help do a dorsiflexion. If my sciatic nerve is compromised, that's not going to happen. Like my muscle won't be able, it doesn't have that message from up here that says, hey, bring your foot up. It just doesn't happen. There's been a little bit of a problem there in the communication, it's not working. So once the disc moves to its original position, the nerve stops the swelling, everything comes back to normal. That might take months, that might take meds, that might take exercise. But usually the disc will go back to its original place. Okay? But not before 6 weeks, that'll tell you, that's a 6-week landmark thing. So that disc can move in any of these vertebrae, but the more common ones are the ones in your lumbar spine and in your cervical spine. Yes?
Practical question.
Yes.
on Teaching in a studio. So if you're in a group setting and somebody walks in and says that they've have a herniated disc and you ask them, was it 6 weeks or less, and they say yes, do you invite them to leave? Or do you,
I would say, are you cleared by your doctor? That's the first question.
and if they insist that they want to take the class, are you free of liability or do you?
You are not free of liability. Exactly, yeah, please, let's just say everybody get your life insurance always, please.
So personally, not, so the studio has liability insurance and then the person has a teacher.
Personally, don't trust the studios.
Got it, okay. Has that ever happened to you?
Has it happened to me? Yes. And I've said, you know what? Maybe let's do a private. In a few days, let's schedule something to see exactly what you have and I can help you out and we can do it. This class is not gonna be great for you. It's just gonna make you feel better and it's kind of dangerous, so I'd rather you not,
So
until you're cleared by a doctor.
refund them the class and you ask them nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Very nicely, very respectful, but protect yourself and protect them.
yeah, Miami's a tough crowd though.
I know, right?
This probably,
But you're tough.
probably wasn't, yeah, that's a problem.
They'll probably make it lead to a bad review.
Yeah, if they've been honest, respectful, that's probably what you were teaching.
Guys, when you teach, you are in charge. So you say who you are teaching or not. If you're not comfortable, it's an injury that doesn't make you comfortable, just don't teach them. They better be safe. Of course, it depends who you talk to. I'm in a PT background, so I'm not gonna do it because that's how I was trained. But it depends who,
Yeah. Okay, no.
that's my personal. And if you do your NCBC test, if you do your PMA test, that's a question of the test. That's a PMA question.
The answer is invite them to leave.
And the answer is get out.
Okay. You can write the manager an email.
Exactly. And they can complain all they want. Okay, so. Those are your vertebrae. That's what this disc is. That's how your third means. Other important thing to know about your spine, which is key for us as Pilates instructors, are the curves of your spine. 2. Lordotic curve. Kyphotic curve. Lordotic curve is the one in your lumbar spine. If you see it from the side, the lumbar and the cervical, those curves that are going anterior, right? So you have it here and you have it here. A lot, maybe more pronounced, less pronounced. And then your kyphotic is the opposite. It goes back, right? Now, we keep those curves to keep a neutral spine. That's the definition of a neutral spine, which is different from a neutral pelvis. So your neutral spine, you're keeping the natural curves of your spine. You don't flatten, you don't imprint, you just keep it natural. So when they lay down and there's a little bit of pocket of air in their lumbar spine, that's fine. That's their natural spine. Don't go against it. Okay? Neutral pelvis is something different. That we do work on a little bit. But these curves we keep. And these curves just give you the proper balance. Any questions on spine so far? Okay. Underneath you have the sacrum, that big flat bone at the end of your lower back. My favorite bone to cue. First, it's very easy to explain. Not everybody knows where it is, but you just tell them, like that big flat bone you have at the end of your lower back, and they're like, oh, yeah, that one. That one's great to cue for many reasons. First, it helps you with a neutral pelvis. Second, if you see here that it has little foramens, little holes in it, all the nerve endings of that spinal cord go through the sacrum, making it very sensational. Like you can feel the sacrum. You can also feel release of pain through the sacrum. So it's a great bone to cue because when you're laying down, you press the sacrum on the mat, you press the ribs on the mat, you achieve a neutral pelvis, and then your lower back releases. All that tension from those nerve endings from the sacrum releases and makes it feel good. So it's a great bone to cue. Just explain where it is. And then underneath it, and by the way, the sacrum The concept of it is 5 vertebrae fused together into that big bone. That's why that's the shape. And lastly, you have the tailbone or the coccyx. That one I don't cue too much because the tailbone, I feel like it's one of those things that either you feel it too much or you don't feel it at all because it's floating. So some people have it very pronounced, and then when they're doing like rolling like a ball or C-curve work, they feel it too much, or then you have the ones that don't feel it. So I don't even cue the tailbone. But just, some people cue, lengthen through the tailbone kind of thing. Any questions on spine? Okay, attaches to pelvis, which is a big deal. Now, bony landmarks important in your pelvis, guys. These landmarks in the front, ASIS, anterior superior iliac spine. If you want to just know where they are, is those bony perfusions at the sides of your abdomen. That's the ASIS. Okay, very simple. Now, you have the posterior, the PSIS. Those are those little dimples above your buttocks, which are these 2 bones back here. You see them? These 2? Okay. Important to know those. Down here, guys, underneath, ischial tuberosities. We never say that in class, but we refer to them as sit bones. Is where you sit, where you are supposed to be very aligned. If you're sitting and doing some short box work, if you're sitting or doing any work where you're sitting and maybe doing rotations, you want to cue the sit bones. You want to make sure the weight is even on the sit bones. And I'll tell you why. And let's use Victoria as an example. She's sitting on her sit bones right now. If she puts more weight on your right sit bone, her shoulders will come uneven, she'll lift the other hip. If she's even, her box of shoulders to hips will be completely even. So cue the sit bones to be able to correct the shoulders. If you see one person with her right shoulder lifted, don't necessarily cue the shoulder, cue the sit bones, because then that shoulder will come down. Sacrum we talked about. Okay. Pubic symphysis. Here. This bone in the front, that's your pubic bone or pubic symphysis. Why am I saying this? Because those are the landmarks that are relevant to a neutral pelvis. Let me explain. Let's see. Can you stand up here actually? With that one. Okay. So, hold on here. And I want you to stick your booty out. Okay. Her ASIS came forward, anterior. This is called an anterior tilt of the pelvis. Now do the opposite, tuck. They went posterior, that's a posterior tilt. Neutral pelvis is this ASIS in line with her pubic bone. Meaning, she's not in anterior tilt, she's not in posterior, she's completely in line here with pubic bone. Completely aligned. Thank you. I'm gonna have you lay down for a second. So, I told you at the beginning that the skeleton is in neutral position, right? So the skeleton, seen from the side, Mr. Bones is how we call him, he's been with us for years. He has a perfect neutral pelvis. So his ASIS is in line with the pubic bone. So he's in complete neutral. Now, how do we achieve neutral in our client that's laying down and is gonna start her ab series or any kind of work, bend your knees for a second. With your feet flat. Okay. So lift your ribs up. Okay. Well, you're gonna find something like this at some point. She's obviously not neutral. But if I tell her to lower her ASIS down to the mat, she's not really gonna know what I'm looking at. But if I ask permission to put my hand here and ask her, press your ribs into my hand, press the ribs on the mat. Immediately her pelvis moved. Did you see that? That movement for her body came to a perfect neutral position. So my neutral, her neutral, and hers are gonna be different because we're all anatomically different. But the most practical way to find it is having the rib cage on the mat, because that will bring the pelvis to the proper neutral. And it'll do something else. It'll bring the top ribs into the midline. Because once your clients start getting a little bit more advanced into Pilates, we want to avoid the rib opening, right? We want to bring the ribs into the midline. If I cue and I tell her, bring your ribs down, bring them into the midline, you kind of don't know how to do that, right? Because that's like, how do I bring my ribs down? But if I tell you, lower your ribs to the mat, those top ribs are going to come automatically to the midline. So we don't have to talk into giving the exact direction. We're giving another direction that will bring the objective that we want. Okay, so cueing those ribs on the mat, those shoulders down, arms long. This is what I want in footwork. So footwork, yeah, it's great to the feet and foot positioning and all those things. But your main thing is creating this box to be neutral and strong. Why do I want a neutral pelvis? Because her abs are gonna be more effective and more efficient when I have them work. If I have her in a tilt, her abs are elongated, they're weak. So people who have their booty scooped out all the time, those are weak abs. If I have her the opposite way, completely tucked in, might be a very strong person, but they probably have poor posture. So it's an over-cramped core. If I have her neutral, that's a perfect position of the core. Now, bring yourself to tabletop. Immediately, the pelvis does something in the tabletop. So make sure, again, you cue here, so the pelvis stays where it is. Lift your head, neck, and shoulders, cover the hands, and let's say extend the legs. Move your arms, let's do 100 here. What I'm looking is to keep the perfect neutral pelvis. What if you lower the legs? Okay, thank you. Well, this is a problem with her. She's really strong. So she's never gonna get out of neutral. You're good, thank you. But an everyday client, when I make her do that, she'll immediately do some sort of something with the pelvis and she'll lose the neutral. If she's losing the neutral, you advanced it too much. Bring them back to proximal. Remember when we talked proximal to distal? Proximal is easier to keep your neutral pelvis. Make sense? Important. Neutral pelvis in Pilates is like your everyday thing. Thank you, Jordan. Okay. Yes.
Like a good cue, like, I mean, for example, like when I teach here, you know, you've got 10 bodies.
Yes.
Spread around, like, what's a good way to kind of like generalize to cue neutral pelvis in the term?
I always try to tell them ribs on the mat. Ribs on the mat is what I try to cue constantly. So most of the people get it really quick, but you will have 2 or 3 that just won't. But you go to them and try to like, make them understand, like, not a little. It's a thing. Okay, guys, any questions so far? Any questions from you guys? Yeah, okay. Let's go to the muscular system. Okay, really quickly, I want to go over muscle types. That's important for us as instructors. Let me see what page you're in. It's not all the way here. Okay, so we're gonna be in pages 9 and 10. I think by now, we're aware that muscles give you movement and stability. We've talked about it for now, so I think we're good with that. Now, muscle types is important for you to know. Skeletal muscle. That's the one we're gonna use the most. That's your voluntary muscle. That's the one, that's your bicep, that's your tricep, that's the one you're telling it to move. That's your voluntary skeletal muscle. It's conscious control. And it attaches, like I said, with the tendon to your bone. An overworked skeletal muscle will affect the tendon. A tendon that gets inflamed takes more than 6 weeks to lose the inflammation, and it creates a lot of pain. So never overwork it. Now, let's say here, examples. Let's talk about footwork again. Different positions of your feet at that bar as you move the carriage, right? You are activating different muscles with the foot position. So let's talk about arches of the feet at the bar. Let's see. Let me have. Face your feet here. Okay. Now come forward and place your arches here. So the position of arches of the feet, she's lengthening the tops of her feet. Extend your legs. Okay. She's lengthening all the anterior chain of her body and finding stretch on her hip flexors. And then she moves back and forth into her footwork. Now, if I take her to heels at the bar, flex your feet. This position is working the anterior part of her leg. It's stretching her Achilles tendon down here completely. And it's activating her quads. So look at all the differences that it makes the different foot position. And then the last position, she's on her tippy toes, her tendons stretch. Because when I lower her heels under the bar, I'm stretching even deeper her Achilles tendon. So different position of the feet on your footwork, you're activating the different muscles in your legs to be able to start your workout. Okay? Thank you, Michael. As much as you have your skeletal voluntary muscle, you always have your involuntary muscle, your smooth muscle. So those are not really relevant to us, but it's kind of blood vessels, digestive system, those kinds of muscles. Last kind of muscle is your cardiac, your heart. That would be the last one to talk about. Not really relevant to us, but we need to know that it is a muscle. We already understood they connect by tendons. Always remember, be aware, be careful with the contraction of the muscle so it doesn't affect the tendon. Now, ligaments. Do you know the difference between a ligament and a tendon? Okay, the tendon helps with the movement because it helps the muscle. The ligament only gives stability to the joint. It does not give movement. It gives stability. The muscles and the tendons contract. They get large, they get small, they contract in different ways like we talked about. The ligaments do not. So an overstretched ligament will never go back to its original position. It'll tear and it'll break, but it will not go back to original. So if you overstretch a joint and you tear that ligament, that's done. That doesn't go back. Shoulders in very intense lower class. Overworked shoulder. Never work out. But If you're strong enough and you work all the muscles around it, it'll help to keep it back into place, but that ligament will never go back to normal. So when you lock knees, you might be overworking a ligament, and so never lock your knees. Because then, when you lock a joint, you get out of the muscle, you get into the joint, you get into the bone and the ligament, and you don't want that. You don't want to work the ligaments, you want to work your muscles. So never overstretch, never lock.
Is that why you usually cue like for someone to just like make sure that there's still a little bit of like a bend?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I do that, or everybody should do that. Okay,
Sorry. When we bring on the end, let's go all the way up, we don't lock our knees.
no, you extend them to straight leg, but it's not locked. So straight and locked are two different things, guys, right? Always be aware of that.
I just think people, too straight without.
Without locking. Yeah. Can you do a plank, please? A long arm. Okay. Overlock here, go forward, dump into the joints. So see how those elbows are completely, they're almost overextended. Now, soft bend, squeeze the abs deeper, lift up. See how that's shaking? That's muscle working. It's an extended arm, but it's not locked. And now, get big. Soft bend is like Chrissy said, it's the hardest thing to cue and understand. An extended leg that is sinking into the joint, it's very easy to achieve. An extended leg that brings the knee patella up and comes from the hip flexor, and they extend and I lift it, it's completely different. So it's where you're bringing that lengthening from. So when you cue your clients and you tell them extend the leg, lift the leg up, you tell them lift from your core, lift from the hip flexor. Don't lift from an extended strong leg. The leg should have always a very soft bend. The knee should not be locked. When you're on planks, you shouldn't be dumping weights into the wrist. And it's all about the cue. So you tell them, lift yourself off the mat, abs tight, lift up like you're in the air. And the concept of proprioception. Proprioception is how your body understands itself in space. So, if I'm in a plank and I'm an extended arm, dumping the weight in the wrist with a completely flexed wrist, it's gonna hurt. Opposite, if I ask them to spread the fingers and almost do like a spider web, give me a little bit of air in the palm of your hand. Soften on the elbow. Now do the plank, they're not sinking into the wrist. So it's how you cue the proprioception. The connection to the floor or to the surface. Hence, your footwork. How your foot is will change the rest of the body, right? Now, where you stand, it changes the rest of the body. How you do a plank, this is very different than this. How your shoulders are back on a plank as opposed to dumping in front. Okay? That's why we play with foot placement. We play with proprioception. One of the great things is we do it with no shoes. So the shoes don't help us, it's all muscle. Okay? And then those balls, those are great. That changes the proprioception of everything, because now you're not stable on the floor, you're completely unstable, so now your muscles are completely working. So changing the proprioception is what helps you not lock your joints.
What was something you've given to open the hands?
Spread the fingers, and then little spider web. So pocket of air in your palm of the hand. So far, good, guys? Understanding? Any questions so far? Okay, let's continue. Continue with our bones. So, finish the pelvis. Let's talk appendicular bones. Humerus is this big bone, arm bone. Attaches to your shoulder girdle, shoulder blade, and clavicle, or collarbone. So this system here is your shoulder. This shoulder girdle up here is what we call the secondary powerhouse. Primary powerhouse, secondary powerhouse. If the secondary powerhouse is not connected, I end up like this. If it's connected and the abs are connected, now there's posture. Radius and ulna are your forearm bones. And then your carpals and your phalanges for your hands. That's your arm. This joint, ball and socket, shoulder joint, very movable, lots of injuries. Now the body is so great and magnificent to study at, that you see that your upper limbs are very similar as your lower limbs. Look. It's the same structure, it's the same architecture. You have one big long bone, two bones to hold on to that big bone, and then your little bones down here, very similar. Now, these bones on your legs are thicker, stronger, because they hold weight. So you have the femur, the longest one, attached to the pelvis, also in a ball socket joint, so the same one as the shoulder. Same movements, same injuries. Then you have the knee. It's a little bit different than your elbow. Now, the knee attaches to these two bones, being the tibia, the most important one, big, thick. And the knee has the sesamoid bone here, which is your patella. Down here, your ankle, this thick bone here is called calcaneus. And then you have your metatarsals, your toes. Okay? Those are the main bones to understand. Main bones we are going to be talking always with our clients. Those we need to be aware of. Any questions with this? This is pretty simple, straightforward. You're good? Okay. Now, next line in order are muscles, and I wanted to talk before we get to the muscles, or during it, talking specifically about powerhouse.
Guys there, all good? Everybody hearing well? Okay.
Good, thank you.
Okay, powerhouse, guys. Talk a little bit about that concept. It was developed by Joseph himself. Every core refers to core musculature that provides stability, strength, control for all movements, often described as the center or described as core, which is the word that we use the most, right? It's a group of muscles that support spine, pelvis, enabling efficient movement, balance, and posture. The concept is foundational for Pilates. It emphasizes the engagement of these muscles to initiate any movement. So, can you read them? Okay, let's talk a little bit about arm strengths. Lay down, knees bent, go forward a lot, like. And then you're holding on to these guys. Arms up. Ribs into the mat, shoulders down. On the inhale, lower your hands long down over the head. So just lengthen the arms and then resist to bring them back up. Lengthen the arms again. On the inhale, on the exhale, resist the movement to lift them up. Now I want you to add head, neck, and shoulders. When your arms go down, lift the chest, look into the abs, tap the mat. and then lower. Now, powerhouse. That movement she's doing, she's starting the center of the body. So what should happen here, she should start, bring it all the way back. Squeeze the abs in, press the belly button. Start moving the arms, lift the shoulder blades, lift the shoulders, then the head and the neck just come with the movement. But the movement should start here in the center. It shouldn't start in the shoulders, it shouldn't start in the neck. If it's done properly, it should look exactly like what she's doing. She squeezed in, then she moved the rest. So primary powerhouse accent, secondary powerhouse should come after. Okay? This is a movement we do a lot in the reformer with straps. Very important. Usually when I teach it in class, I ask them to hold on to the straps, and the first thing they do is they come up immediately. I try to have them only move the arms a few times, so this starts like activating, and then lift head, neck, and shoulders. Doesn't always happen. That's kind of like what I do. Now, really quickly, anatomical focus of the powerhouse. It describes the powerhouse as a region from the base of the pelvis to the lower rib cage, including deep and superficial muscles that stabilize and mobilize the pelvis and the spine. So everything here, which we already talked about. Functional role. It's the origin of all movement, taught that every exercise should start in the powerhouse. That's how Joseph saw it. Every movement he showed us is supposed to start in the center of the body. Now, the most beautiful concept, which is the one I like, is the holistic point of view. It's viewed as more than just muscles. It was the integration of the mind, body, and breath. Engaging the powerhouse fosters mental focus, enhances body awareness, promotes energy transfer throughout the body. And the most beautiful thing is, it's where life starts. Core principles connections, the powerhouse aligns with the Pilates 6 principles. So just always remember, guys, please, concentration, control, center, flow, precision, and breathing. Okay, now please make a note in your guide. The muscles of your powerhouse, important to know that. The TBA transverse abdominis. Let's talk about that muscle a little bit. The transverse abdominis, think of it as a belt. It goes transversely like this, on this side, like a belt. It's the muscle that we use in every exercise in Pilates. It is always activated. It goes like here. It's the deepest muscle in our abdomen, in our ab cavity. And always activated in Pilates. So every time we do any isometric work, or not even isometric, concentric, whichever one, the transverse is always activated. The deepest, the most important in Pilates. TBA. Rectus abdominis, it's the most famous one. The rectus abdominis goes all the way from your sternum to your pubic bone. So it's long. It's your sixth back. It's the most superficial. So transverse, the deepest, the other one the most superficial. It's the easiest to sculpt. So if I do 10,000 little ab curls, it'll really puffs up. But because it's so easy, it has a few issues as well. It actually pops out. So in Pilates, we work the concept at abdominals in and up in order also to avoid that rectus abdominis coming out. If you do this movement a lot, in Pilates we say scoop the abs, bring the abs in. When you're in your gym setting and you're doing a lot of that, that muscle tends to go out. So you never want to do that. But that's why you can see the six pack so easily. Okay. It's the longest one. Very much activated in teaser. Why? Because when you start the teaser from laying down, And then you come up, you're laying down, you're stretching the muscle all you can. And then you tease her up, you cinch the muscle, so you're working at its best. A little side note you can make here. There's a principle in your body, that the more you stretch a muscle, the more it contracts. So most of the exercises, if you take a real look at Pilates exercises, most of them will first stretch the muscle and then contract it. That's why it's so efficient, hence the teaser. You start extending, then you teaser yourself up, you cinch the muscle. Double leg stretch. You go from in to out, out to in. So you open, you close. You're extending, you're bending. Everything you stretch will contract more efficiently when you do the movement. That hence again why Pilates exercises are. Any question on the rectus abdominis? Third muscle of your powerhouse, it's a group of them, internal and external obliques. Those are your waist muscles on the sides. They rotate, they side bend, they hinge. Next muscle, multifidus. The multifidus, tiny little thing, and they're actually in the spine, in between the vertebrae. So they're not even in the part of the anterior core. They're more close to the spine. Next muscle, the primary respiratory muscle, your diaphragm. Now your diaphragm, you want to think of it as a dome. It's like a floor for all your respiratory organs. And I believe you might have a picture of it in your handout. Let me see. I'm pretty sure there was one. Which one? 16. It's 16, but it's in the last one, right? 29, page 29. That is your diagram. It's like a floor. Right, it's like a dome. Okay.
A question on the relationship between the diaphragm and the spine, especially with release. I don't know, for me specifically, it's too specific, but with my scoliosis and where it is, since it's dorsal, I always have kind of almost like a soreness where my bra line is. And when I go to any kind of PT or anything, they release my diaphragm. Is there anything that we can do in class that's a diaphragm release? And how do you feel about that, or is that something outside the scope of?
It's out of the scope of us, it's too difficult to release it and isolate it. But it's ideal for what you're talking about, but it's more like a therapeutic technique. But yes, you do, if you release the diaphragm, then you release tension. You can breathe and you can use more back muscle.
There's really no work per se that you can do for the diaphragm.
Very specific breathing work, but then you would have to have a lot, you can't do it in a class. You know what I mean? Like it would be a one-on-one setting. So it's very specific.
Yeah.
It's a whole technique. But just as she's saying, the diaphragm is completely interlocked with everything powerhouse related. And then we'll talk a little bit about going on what she's saying, pelvic floor. You also have a good picture of pelvic floor over there in page 27. Pelvic floor is probably the most used term, just like hip flexors. And a lot of people don't know what it is or what it entitles. So I would want for you to know. Now, pelvic floor is the floor down here of muscles. It's like where my hand is, okay? And it supports all your internal organs. Above here is that dome that we talked about, the diaphragm. So these two talk to each other. Now, that floor in your pelvic floor, it's all your muscles, basically, to go to the bathroom kind of muscles. So our hands, elevator, and all of those. So do you feel them when you exercise? Not really. But those are activated in your powerhouse. And you'll have quite a few clients that will walk in and say that their doctors referred them to Pilates in order to work on the powerhouse. Work on the pelvic floor. How do we work on pelvic floor? All our exercises work it, so especially a bridging exercise will work pelvic floor. Specific kinds of teasers will also work pelvic floor without me really being conscious about it, but Pilates has a lot of it. And it's considered, all those group of muscles are considered to be into our powerhouse. Okay? And then we have two back muscles, erectors spinae, so extensors of the spine. And the quadratus lumborum, which has a very long name, and we just call it QL. QL, you've probably heard many times. It's a muscle here on the side of your lower back. So it goes like this, where my hand here. This is your QL on the side. That muscle is completely activated when you do abs. And it's the first muscle you feel when you have like a lower back, kind of not an injury, just like, oh, I pulled my lower back. That's usually the QL. Other muscles involved in your powerhouse, your glutes and your rotators. Big muscles, strong. Any more questions with powerhouse?
So when you have a client that is either postpartum or they're pregnant, one of the things that I know they talk about is wanting to avoid jumping. What's like a good way to kind of like cue that, what are they looking for?
So what you want to avoid, and we talked about this yesterday, in your pregnancy or postpartum, is overworking the core. You want to keep it strong, you don't want to overwork it because you want the nature of the pregnancy to happen without putting strain on those muscles. So if I overwork that rectus abdominis, when the belly starts growing for the baby, the muscle, it will give in. But what will give in is the center that unites the both, the center of aponeurosis, which is a midline in between the two muscles. That starts opening and it becomes a diastasis. So once that happens, you want to work it back in. The only way to work a diastasis back in is using isometric work. Planking, hundreds, that kind of work. But the more roll-ups and traditional abs you do, the worse that muscle gets. So you want to work midline, ribs into the midline, ribs down to the mat. Concept of middle. Now, what activates your muscle, your abdominals muscles that are not directly the abdominal? Yes, that too. But the one thing that activates them right away, adductors, your inner thighs. When you work inner thighs, your abs immediately work as secondary muscle. So any inner thigh work, let's say a ball between the thighs, straps, whatever it is, that's gonna activate your abs. So in a question like she said about a pregnancy, postpartum speaking, the inner thigh work will definitely work with that. However, in pregnancy, you don't want to do a little ball between these.
So when you're pregnant, like actually right now after, when I do a lot of orthopedics, because I always heard no rotation, now I'm hearing yes, you can rotate, I'll say that it's rotate.
It is. So here's the thing, they didn't do anything. They're actually stronger than most of your other clients. They can really work it. What you want to avoid in the rotation is the overstretching of the oblique. Now, you want to work the sides, you want to work a little bit of rotation. You don't want to overstretch it because in pregnancy, they will stretch more. Their hormones will make them overstretch. Just to be like careful with it, but they can rotate. You limit the range of motion. And that's a really good question. How much do I go? You go less. When in doubt, less range of motion for everything, more proximal. So instead of doing a whole rotation, you go halfway. That's enough for that muscle to work. That's a good question.
Question.
Yes.
I know like postpartum, they're not really supposed to come back until like 6 to 8 weeks, right? Like they have to be given like the okay. But would you still be like prioritizing the isometric work post-pregnancy within those first few weeks?
A little
or-
bit, yes. Yes, in those first few weeks, I would favor the isometric work. Not because it's dangerous for the muscles, but because her body is still getting back into place, her organs getting back in. So I don't wanna mess with that. I want her organs to come back up. And then once it's been a few months, then I start getting crazy. But I definitely want all the internal organs to come back in before anything.
This goes back to the program combination of rotation, and I was thinking about the QL, and I was thinking about somebody sitting on the box where you want to cue them to go over 6 bones down. So like an example for spear fish, which I love to teach, but I want to make sure that I have wet. When you take it down, you know.
Yeah, the reach and hinge.
So like something like that, would you be mindful to keep both the 6 bones on the box the whole time, so they're even as they're rotating and they're doing the spear? Absolutely.
When you're rotating on a short box, rotate and reach like we learned yesterday. Definitely you want still the sit bones to be even as you go back. That's what's gonna make it more effective. No, you have an anchor point. That's your anchor point here to hinge over there. That way that muscle is completely stretching and this one is working.
And that's where I hear people complaining of, and I can remember kind of when I was practicing a long time ago before I taught, feeling the QL work there, where I wasn't sure that I liked how it felt, but didn't know if it was back pain or muscular.
Right? But it is the proper way to do it. That's what you want. The minute you lift here, two things happen. Either you lose the exercise or it's more prone to injury because there's no anchor point. So you want to know what are your anchor points for each exercise when you teach. So either, short box or whatever it is, you need to know, okay, what are the structures that are supposed to be touching something and not moving? Right, so your sit bones or your shoulder movement, whatever it is. Okay, any questions on powerhouse, guys? Okay. Little bit something here. The spinal muscles, will work synergetic with the transverse abdominis, the pelvic floor, the diaphragm, the obliques to form the powerhouse. Create a single cord that supports the spine during all body movements. The reason I read that is because I want you to be aware that in your muscle groups, those synergist muscles are muscles that work together to create a movement. So I can isolate my quadriceps to do a movement of the knee. But I can work in synergy with muscles of my pelvis to be able to work the quad. So I don't necessarily have to work in alone. You can work with other muscles. You also should be aware that you always have a primary muscle and a secondary muscle in an exercise. So I can have a bicep work and your primary muscle is going to be the biceps, bringing that hand up. And then your secondary muscle is going to be your brachialis, which is a muscle that's underneath the biceps. So you have two working. It's not only one. There's always a secondary they're working with. Okay. Okay, guys, it's 3. Do you want to break for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or you want to keep going? We're here till 4. You're good? You can eat, drink, do whatever while we talk. We don't have to. You're completely allowed to eat and drink and do whatever you want to do. Okay. We're getting there, guys. Any questions so far? Well, let's get more now that you know all the different muscles, how they work, how they contract, etc. Give me a second. Okay. Now let's talk about the specific muscle names and where they are. So the easiest way to learn your muscles is first learn the muscles that are relevant to your craft, right? So muscles that are relevant for us and Pilates. There's no use of learning the specific muscles of the hands, for example. Like those are a lot of them and not necessary. So learn what's necessary. Second, learn them by sections. So in that little handout that you have there, you have the specific sections of things. And it makes it just a little bit easier to learn them. If you want more information on these, I'll see if I can nail you some more like a little bit deeper into insertions and origins if you want to know more about your muscle work. Okay, so we're gonna start with muscles of the head and neck. Let me be on the same page as you in a second. Okay. Muscles of the head and neck. It's good for you to know certain ones here because again, like we said, the neck is involved in all of our muscles, in all of our movements and bodies. The first one is your sternocleidomastoid. The longest name. That muscle, if you look at me here, and you can feel it in your neck, there is a muscle that is protruding here that you can see it come out. This is your sternocleidomastoid. And you have it, if you move your neck around, you'll see it, you'll feel it. It's called that way, everything in anatomy makes sense because of where it attaches. Sternum to the clavicle to the mastoid bone. So sternocleidomastoid. It attaches like a triangle. It's the primary muscle specific movement, prime mover. It moves to rotate your head, bend it, extend it. Okay? Now, Pilates application. Engage the abs to curl the head up. Bring your head, neck, and shoulders up. Lift your head, that's your sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so every time you're doing abs and you bring your chest, you lift and you bring your head up, that muscle you feel here in the front, that's your sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so the reason I put it here in the guide is because it's the first muscle your client will complain about when they're new, when they're starting to do abs in Pilates and they're like, the front of my neck hurts, it's that muscle. It doesn't really get injured, it's a very strong muscle, but you feel it a lot when you do a lot of abs, okay? Next one, head, neck, and shoulders is your trapezius. It's in the back. And just as the name says it, trapezius, it has the shape of a trapezoid. So it's a rather big muscle. It's large, it's triangular. It goes in the upper back, from the base of your skull, so all the way up here, mid-thoracic spine, out to the shoulders. So it covers a lot of territory. It elevates, retracts, and depresses the shoulder blades. And it extends and rotates the neck. So it moves the neck, it moves shoulder blades. And an overdeveloped trapezoid, do you know those like, I don't like to talk about stereotypes, but the typical like gym person that has it like this thing that comes here with two little things here, that's your overdeveloped trapezoid, okay? Opposite of Pilates, because what do we do all day? What do we cue all freaking day to our clients? Shoulders down, open the collarbones, shoulders down, open the collar. That's you telling them to bring the trapezoid down. So if you ask me, the one exercise I avoid is anything doing this, anything up. Cause I don't want anything old.
You don't do any like old roads.
I really do. I should, but I don't. I'm just, cause that muscle is, and this is something for you to know, the trapezoid really reacts quickly. So it takes very little to work it. So you do a few of these and already it's gonna be developed. So that's why I say away, but you shouldn't say away, you should work on muscles all. Anyways, next one, scalenus. Scalenus is in the side of your neck towards the front.
Which page, I'm sorry, I'm a little lost, which page are we on?
Head and neck muscles.
Shoulder girdle.
No.
All the way.
I'm gonna tell you, it's page 11. Page 11, I keep going back and forth.
Got it, all right,
Okay. I'm just talking to you about the muscles in your head and your neck. Okay? Scalenus would be the next. It's here, it's like in the front to the side of the neck. Okay? Obviously moves the neck. Pilates reference. It supports deep breathing, rib expansion. Tight scalenus will limit your neck mobility. So, have you ever had, when you wake up, sometimes you slept wrong and you can barely move the neck to the right or to the left, that's a scalenus. That's that typical like, oh my God, I can barely move it that way. It's that muscle. Okay, I just want you to have like everyday references to understand what are we talking about in the body. Okay, elevator of the scapula. It's in the back. What does it do? It elevates the scapula. It goes above the scapula, it brings it up. Scapula is the same as shoulder blade. Tightness is going to cause neck stiffness and overuse, poor posture, because it'll do the same thing as the trapezius. It'll bring your shoulders up. So we can have down. And then you have the splenius, which is another small muscle in your neck, not very relevant to us. And subocipitalis, that muscle is underneath your skull. It's a small muscle. And then you have your longus, it's another back neck muscle. Those are muscles that I wanted you to have in your guide, just because they are only used in your Pilates movements. So they're muscles in the front and in the back of your neck. That's what's going to constitute the principal neck muscles of your body. Yep. Good. Let's go to torso. So a little bit lower. Now we're on page 11. 13. You're right. 13. Okay. Pectoralis major. We call them pecs. Those are your chest muscles. Very much activated in Pilates as well. They're long, they're big, and they're shaped like in Spanish, an abanico, like a fan. You know, a Spanish fan? They're shaped like that. They go one side and to the other, very diagonal. And they cover upper chest, over here in the front. The pecs go sternum to shoulder to clavicle. So like my hand is doing right now. Okay, those are your pecs. Pectoralis major. Pilates, they're engaged in push-ups and chest expansion. Common use produces tightness and rounded shoulders. So, very important to know and be aware. This muscle, we use it a lot in like when we're doing push-ups, right? When you do push-ups with open elbows, can I have you do a push-up? Okay, so wide elbow, you do a push-up down, you lift it up. That is her pectoralis. Now, can you do a Pilates push-up with your elbows towards your ribs? Bring the elbows. That is more emphasis in your tricep, less on her pecs. Thank you. Now, the pecs are very easy to work because they're big, they're strong, they cover a lot of real estate in your body. But if you overwork them, this happens. Poor posture. Why? An overworked muscle is a shortened muscle, right? And if I shorten the space between the shoulder and the sternum, the shoulder comes forward and I walk like this. Does that mean I don't want to work the pecs? No. What it means is that after doing push-ups, you should stretch the collarbones. So you work chest expansion, or you do some lung back stretch, or you do anything that promotes the extension. So there's a balance between the anterior and posterior part of the body. Going back to how to create lesson plans. So you do push-ups, after the push-ups, you're gonna create an exercise that gives you extension to avoid a bad posture. Does that make sense? Okay. In your torso, the next one you have there is the rectus abdominis, which we already talked about, so we don't have to go back to it. Next one, erector spinae, we also talked about it, that's the spinal extensor of your back, it's in your torso. Okay, any questions so far? Let's go to spine muscles, we're on page 14. Again, erector spinae. And again, multifidus. We talked about the multifidus when we were talking about powerhouse. Now, the location of the multifidus, it's the deep posterior spine from sacrum, all the way from the sacrum to the cervical. So it's a little tiny thing that goes between each vertebra, up, all the way up. It stabilizes during movement. So if I'm rotating, extending, etc., it's gonna stabilize my spine. Critical for spinal stability and Pilates exercises, especially in a plank, in a roll-up. When you have a plank and you're asking your client to, okay, abs in, open chest, give me a perfect spine for your plank. That is that muscle, the multifidus, keeping everything in mind. Okay? It engages, and this is the main reason why we study this muscle, it engages your deep core. Deep core is a concept used in Pilates quite a bit because it's everything related to your muscle, deeper layers of abs, such as your transfers. This multifidus will engage it. QL, which we talked a little bit before, it's that muscle in your lower back on the sides of your lower back. Pilates reference, it's active in all lateral movements, such as a mermaid or a spine twist. And it supports always your pelvic, neutral pelvis while you're doing abs. Then you have the semispinalis, which is another spinal muscle. Rotatories, part of rotators of your spine. Now, let's talk about the practical application of all these muscles I just talked about. Why did I even mention them? For spinal stability. So for example, the multifidus and the rotatories that I talked about provide stability in dynamic exercises, just as plank and teaser and all of those. So you need all those back muscles to stabilize while you're doing movements. They provide spine mobility and control and posture and alignment. Okay, so are you going to talk about each one of these muscles in particular and activate one of them and create a specific exercise for the multifidus? No, but you have to know that when you're doing all your ab work and doing all your planking, those are all the muscles that are being activated and they're working. So now you know that when you're doing a plank, it's not only your core, your spine is involved, your muscles all the way from the sacrum to the cervical spine. So you know it's more of the body than just an ab work. Does that make sense? Any questions there? Okay, let's get to upper limbs. That would be page 17. It's an orbital resolve, so 17, okay. Skeletons. These guys. deltoids are, let's say, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a cup. It's a cup over your shoulder. So it goes all the way from the clavicle to this end of the humerus. Did you all get COVID shots? That's where you get your COVID shot. So it goes from here to this end over here. It has 3 regions. It has an anterior region, medial, posterior. So it hugs your shoulder. It's very small. And the beauty of the deltoid is that you work it very little and it sculpts immediately. And if it sculpts, it makes your arm look longer. So when we're doing photo shoots for people, we usually hub up the deltoids a lot, and then that arm is gonna look beautiful. How do you work the deltoid? So think of this, has 3 parts, anterior, medial, posterior, okay? Anterior, this is how you work it, to the front. Medial, you work it to the side. Posterior, to the back. So this is how you work a deltoid. It's very easy. The most efficient way to work it is with little tiny movements and very tiny weights. So we do a little bit of work here, a little bit of work here, a little bit of work here. That's all your deltoid needs. Very small, 10 minutes, that's it. It'll be sculpted and beautiful. And it'll protect your shoulder a lot. So it's like a very faithful muscle. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, most important, guys, in this, read it, learn it, rotator cuff muscles. You're gonna you hear that all the time in clients that come with rotator cuff issues. Those just are a group of 3 little muscles, supraspinous, infraspinous, teres minor, and supraspinalis. So 4 muscles. Those little muscles are on the back towards your shoulder blade. They move the shoulder blade together with the shoulder, they produce this movement, rotation. And when they're inflamed, you can't do any kind of rotation, you can't do this. It's a very common injury and you will find it in your clients a lot. So it's very simple, what not to do, what they can't do. So they can't do this, you're gonna avoid anything overhead rotating. They can rotate, you're also gonna avoid that. Okay, it's very simple, but it happens, it's very common. You have the pectoralis, which we already talked about. Next one, latissimo dorsi, very famous, those are your lats. Which we use in Pilates quite a lot. It's on your lower back and thorax. It goes from the spine to the ribs to the pelvis. So look at it here. It goes from your spine to your ribs to your pelvis. So it has a lot of real estate. It's active in pulling movements, like pulling straps on the reformer. It's the opposite of the pecs. So the pecs were active when you were pushing in a push-up. The lats are active when you pull, like pulling straps. Questions there? Bicep. I think we all know the concept of the bicep, what it does. Is everybody comfortable with the bicep? Okay. Tricep, opposite of the bicep, in the back of the arm. It's anything on the back, by the way, or the posterior chain is harder to sculpt. So your bicep, your hamstrings are harder always to sculpt. Brachialis is a small muscle underneath your bicep that does the same action as the bicep. And then you have your forearm muscles. So forearm muscles are related to your wrist, flexors and extensors of the wrist. We try to avoid overworking those so we don't get wrist issues. Okay, now, few little things to write here on your notes, guys. Shoulder stability. The rotator cuff and the deltoid are the ones key for shoulder stability. So you want to work on those. Arm control and strength is given by bicep and tricep. And posture and alignment is given by a good balance between the pecs and the lats. So write those 3 things down, because that's important for you when you're doing any kind of lesson. Yeah, say it again? Okay. No, but I'm glad you're asking me. So shoulder stability, it's rotator cuff and deltoid. Arm control and strength, it's your bicep and tricep. Posture and alignment, it's the balance between pecs and lats. That is overall everything I just talked about, all these muscles. Everything I said, just that is what you want to be aware of. That's the important part. Okay, let's keep going, guys. I want you to be aware of your shoulder girdle. Shoulder girdle is a concept that you hear, but it's again, your secondary powerhouse, and it's important for you to understand it. They're essential for stabilizing the scapula, supporting our movements and maintaining proper posture. I'm gonna read you the muscles in your shoulder girdle. I'm just gonna go through them quick, just for you to know. It's your trapezoid. It's your rhomboid. That one we haven't talked about. The rhomboid. Those are the muscles between your spine and your scapula. So they come together. If you do hugging a tree, when you open, your rhomboids come close to each other. When you bring it in, your rhomboids come away from each other because they're from the spine to the scapula. Okay. Questions there? Other muscle in your shoulder girdle, elevator of the scapula, pecs, and subclavius. That's the little muscle underneath your clavicle. Why am I talking about this? Because they would give you scapular stability, upper body control, and proper alignment. Questions on that? Questions on upper limbs? Questions on upper limbs, guys? No? Okay. Lower limbs. We made it to the legs. Not sure what page is that. Okay. In the back, posterior chain, gluteus maximus and medius and minimus. They go posterior to the hip. They go from the pelvis, sacrum to the femur. They engage the hip extension. So they should be activated in the bridges. They should be activated in your kickbacks, in your side kicks, in your lunges when you do reformer lunges on the box. Weakness, and I told you this prior today, weakness in your glutes will cramp those hamstrings during the bridge. So the tighter the glute, the stronger the bridge. The tighter the glute on the bridge, the more protected your lower back. So key the glutes when you're bridging. That's the maximus. The medius and the minimus are very similar, and they basically do the same thing. They're key for pelvic stability side kicks. So all of them work in synergy together. Okay, very important muscle to kind of make sure you do notes around it is the iliopsoas. The iliopsoas is actually 2 of them, the ilio and the psoas. It's anterior of the hip and lumbar, spine, and femur. So if you see it in here, It's anterior of the head in front. And it goes from the lumbar spine all the way to the femur. What happens when that muscle is so key for us? It's always activated when you do core. But here's the thing, if that psoas, it's called people just call it psoas, but it's really the iliopsoas. If it's too long and weak, you will have a pronounced lordosis. You will have this, people sticking their booty out. And very weak abs. If it's tight, you will have somebody walking like a tugged pelvis. They walk like this. It's very exciting. A balanced out ilio is what gives you a healthy lower back. So the iliopsoas is directly related to the lower back. Like a tuck. And what happens? If I'm in a tuck, all my muscles in the lumbar spine are elongated, so they're weak.
That's my.
Correct, yeah. No, not necessarily.
But they're tied together.
Not necessarily. The sciatic nerve is more related to the piriformis than the spine.
For the other, someone who's really tight, would the knee stretch series be beneficial to them or like harmful?
The knee stretch series will actually, it's a good balance for it. It tightens it and it stretches it, both. So actually, the knee stretch series is a good exercise for it, even so is.
It's active in inflection exercises like teasers and 100. It tightens, when it's too tight, it causes that anterior pelvic lift. And it stretches when you do hip flexor stretches. So if you do that little hip flexor on the reformer, you're stretching the iliopsoas. Quads. You know it's called quadriceps because it has 4 fascias. So it has 4 parts to it. 4, quadriceps. It's the anterior of the thigh, it extends the knee, and it flexes the hip. Engages in the extension when you do leg press, for example, on a reformer. Or double leg stretches. Overuse, knee strain. I think quad is very straightforward, right? Okay, we have adductors and abductors. Adductors means movements in. Abductors, like you're abducting someone, moves out. You see that little trick. Now, adductors are the muscles on your inner thigh, bringing your legs in. Abductors, they're on the outer thigh. Abductors, like you're abducting someone. Trust me, we'll never better. Also, adductors, if they're coming in, adductors, they are also internal rotations of the head because they're doing everything in. Abductors, external rotators of the head. They all work together. I put there the list of the names of each one of them. In the names that I put there, I wanted you to know tensor of the fascia lata, important for you to know. That's a muscle, which for some weird reason, people confuse it with the IT band. Those are 2 different things. The IT band is not a muscle. The tensor of the fascia lata is. 2 different things. And the other muscle I want you to look at there is the sartorius. Sartorius is the longest muscle in your body. It's long and very thin. It goes from the hip all the way to the internal part of your knee. It's the longest thin muscle there. The IT band has more or less the same real estate as sartorius. Any questions so far? External hip to internal knee. Guys, we go down to gastrocnemius and soleus. Those are your calf muscles. Your gastrocnemius is the one you really have to know. That's the one you see in your calf, right? And it has two parts to it. Why is that so important? Because of the tendon of the gastrocnemius. The tendon of the gastrocnemius is your strongest tendon in the body, and it's called your Achilles tendon. It goes here. And it's fine, your Mr. Bones here. Gastrocnemius is that meaty part of your calf. Then here is where your Achilles tendon starts, and it goes all the way underneath your ankle to the sole of your foot. A very tight Achilles tendon, aside from being painful, gives you plantar fasciitis. You don't want to mess with the Achilles tendon. You want it very stretched and worked, and you want it balanced. So for us, in footwork in the reformer, tendon stretch refers to the tendon of the Achilles tendon. For us in running, we're kind of working also the Achilles. Chair work works beautifully the Achilles tendon, one that chair work. So Achilles, you want to keep it as healthy as you can to avoid your plantar fasciitis, avoid tendonitis. You don't want to mess with that one. So what does it do? The gastrocnemius and the soleus, they point your toes. Opposite of that is flexing your toes, right? The flexing of your toes is given by the muscle in the anterior part of your leg, in your tibia. And because it's in the tibia, it's called tibialis anterioris, in the anterior part of the tibia. And it just brings your foot up. How do you know that muscle? Because of shin splints. Your shin splints, that's your tibialis anterioris acting up. You walked too much, or you ran too much, you overused it.
What's the way to strengthen?
Your tibialis, walking. As easy as that. Overwalking is shin splints. Anybody has ever had shin splints? Not fun, right? When you travel. Exactly. I was gonna say. The shin splints are like synonym of travel. Yeah. And then we have intrinsic foot muscles, which are all your muscles in your feet. So we're not gonna go into those each one, just saying that they're there. Now, okay, guys, write these little notes about the lower limb. Pelvic lift and stability. It's given by the gluteus medius and your adductors. Hip and pelvic stability given by adductors and gluteus. Leg control and strength, it's given by quadriceps and hamstrings.
Sorry, I'm still on the board.
Yes, so
You said hip and pelvic stability? Is that-
Correct. Hip and pelvic stability is gonna be gluteus and adductors. Adductors, ADD. Coming in. The leg control and strength is your quads and your hamstrings. Which I don't know why I didn't mention the hamstrings. I guess because we talk about it so much. Where are the hamstrings? The back of your leg. We know that, right?
Hamstring for what?
quads and hamstring,
Quads and hamstrings.
is strength.
Foot and ankle alignment is given by your foot muscles, obviously, and your tibialis anterioris.
Is given by what?
Foot muscles and tibialis. That's your ankle support. Oh my God, that alarm. Okay. We're almost there, guys. Hang in there. Okay, I need you to know hip flexors. Please, if you came to my course, I want you to know hip flexors. It's the most overused term. I have never not heard an instructor not talk about hip flexors. The problem is that 50% of people do not know what are the hip flexors. So I want you to know them, write them, and understand them. Hip flexors. The hip flexor muscles are essential for initiating hip flexion. They stabilize the pelvis. They support dynamic movement and blogs. Understanding their anatomy and function helps instructors effectively enhance client's performance and prevent strain and injury. So I'm gonna give you the names of the muscles of the hip flexors. Iliopsoas, we talked about it. Psoas minor. And just as a caveat, this is very obvious, but I'm gonna say it anyways, the hip flexors are in the pelvic hip area. Iliacus. Rectus femoris, that's just part of your quads, you can say quads. Sartorius. TFL, tensor of the fascia lata. And adductors. Adduct with double D. So those are your hip flexors, nothing else. Those are the only ones, not all the others that people mention. Now, another common thing about the hip flexors is when we're doing abs, our clients tend to say, it's getting into my hip flexors, I'm feeling my hip flexors too much. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. You're supposed to feel your hip flexors when you're doing abs. That's fine. They assist with the ab. Do we want them taking over? No, obviously, we want more core. But hip flexors are meant to be used when you're doing abs. There's nothing wrong with feeling them. So don't be afraid if your client is saying, it's getting on my hip, I can feel them, but yeah, you're fine. Now, you can stretch them after. You can do some hip flexor stretches and just get out of that, no problem. But there's nothing wrong if you overwork them. Because you're always gonna work posture anyways, because you're in Pilates, so they're not. And another thing is, if you really wanna release the hip flexors because it's really bothering your client, froggy position. So heels together, toes apart, open the knees. That will release the hip flexor. Okay, external rotation of the head. Any questions with hip flexors?
What causes that that sensation of the tight hips? Is it usually like the top of the glute? Is it the entire?
So the sensation of hip flexor?
Like if somebody comes in identifying hip flexor tightness, et cetera, is it usually because the posterior chain is too tight or?
No, the opposite. Posterior chain is too weak and anterior chain is too tight. That's why you feel it. You're dabbing, maybe you did too much abs, or maybe it's not because the person is strong, maybe it's their everyday life. Maybe they're sitting down too much, they work at a desk job where it's sitting very heavy lid, so it could be more related to that, not necessarily work.
So it's incorrect then when you release, like for example, in a massage, you release like the upper glute and the idea there is it kind of is helping with the.
With the hip flexor?
Well, because doesn't it wrap all the way around? I mean, doesn't it start from the back and go towards?
The psoas goes from here.
Yeah.
In the back and the lower back, all the way forward down to the hip.
But it's like, physically, it's like a wrap over.
Yes, but it's underneath the glutes, really much under.
So releasing.
So your glutes is over it. No.
You release the psoas here.
You release the psoas, yes, you release the psoas by stretching and externally rotating.
Or,
So you would need to do this movement here to release the psoas. So when it's done like, so that's one thing, how to release it through movement. But if you're releasing it through manipulation, it's different because maybe they're working muscle activation on one muscle to release another. That's a different thing. So that's not movement, that's just muscle activation. Because you can activate glute to release another muscle.
okay.
Okay. Okay. So those are hip flexors. Something different is your pelvic muscle. Hip flexors specifically to do the hip. Pelvic muscles. They include pelvic floor and they include hip flexors. So they're all in your pelvis. Yes.
I was on the short walk and they're doing side gym work. And they say that, oh, this hurts my hip. It's itching my hip. Is that-
On the hip that they're supported on or on the other one?
that they're supported on.
Well, that's just because you're sitting right on it. Just put a sticky pad. But it's nothing wrong with the muscle. No, no. It's just, where you're sitting. It's like a myofascial release that hurts. Okay. Pelvic muscles, it's pelvic floor and hip flexors. The pelvic floor we already talked about, right? Elevator of the ani and coccygean. So all of your muscles deep. Other pelvic muscles, piriformis. Piriformis is the muscle related to the sciatic nerve because they're close together. When you do your number 4 stretches, you're releasing the piriformis.
And yeah, a lot of people keep, a lot of walking or something, the sciatic gets almost like locked. What that line wants supposed to do.
They're not supposed to do long kicks down and up, but they are supposed to do number 4 stretches. But
So
stay
they
away
say,
from
oh,
the
if
kicks.
it's a treat, it should not bring the.
Correct. Exactly. Good example.
And I'm thinking that is it clicking sound necessarily bad?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I used to happen to me all the time. Does that happen to you?
Once in a while, we rarely get like weird, but not.
It's usually with leg circles for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
The hip, and I hear like a click, click, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is.
That's fine. If you hear me in class, I sometimes even when I teach the leg circles, I usually tell them, you want to hear your clicks and sounds and cracks and noises. Because you're lubricating the hip like we said at the beginning. And you want that motion to happen and to release all that. That's just friction.
So in your
And you want the friction, how do you take out the friction? With lubrication. No, not enough synovial fluid, not enough lubricant in it. So bone to bone, or maybe not even bone. Sometimes it's just soft tissue that it's hardening a little bit. So that doesn't mean a tight muscle. It can mean like a ligament that's hardening a little bit. We all create like scar tissue around our body, and just sometimes we gotta release it. And we have to be careful with what we take. And be careful with supplements. Like I know we love supplements, for example, and collagen. Everybody takes collagen because it makes us look great. But collagen produces scar tissue. It produces collagen. If you don't need it because your body is already doing it, and now you're adding more collagen, it has to go somewhere. It's gonna go into tendons and ligaments in areas you don't want it, and you're gonna start overproducing, and then you get even more cracks and noises. So be careful with buying supplements. I feel very strong.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel very strong. So don't get me started.
That's
You
so
know,
interesting.
Yeah, I'll tell you, do not buy anything without blood work.
So interesting because my whole entire body's ready. All teachers have always said, if I've mentioned it, no, you just have to limit your range of motion. It shouldn't be clicking. So it's interesting.
It's always gonna click. And it's just gonna click one, in stages. Like maybe you have a few months, you don't even hear it, and then it comes down. That's scar tissue producing SR. Other muscles in your pelvis, just to mention them, obturator, gemelli, quad, iliac. I just wanted you to have a list of your pelvic muscles. Okay, guys. Okay, stand with me, this is 15 more minutes. We have just to talk really quickly about the nervous system and the respiratory system, but muscle wise, we're good. Any questions with muscles?
And one more.
Yes.
This is going back to the hip flexors, which is that where I'm reading out something that now I feel like might be incorrect, so coordination. That you should always keep the knees over the hips, and it was to avoid getting into the hip flexors. That's what I was told. I was regurgitating that because somebody told me. But then I saw a video of classical Pilates instructors.
Overrated.
Way over the hip. And I was like, what's the right thing?
Well, do you remember when I talked about the more you stretch a muscle, the more you work the muscle? It's the other way around as well. The more you cinch it, the more you stretch it. So in coordination, bend the knees all the way, extend them, hold breath, open, close, and bend in. You have full range of motion with that hip flexors, extending all the way, bending all the way. It should be all the way.
Right, so then what about if you're not doing full coordination, what if you just have a leg at tabletop and you're lowering and lifting arms, and the knees still be over the hips, or in that case should be off?
Well, it depends. You can do a tabletop, which is knees over hips, or you can bring it further in. When you bring it further in, your abs are no longer 100% activated. If you're at 90, like if you're in tabletop, then your abs are more activated. So it just depends what you're looking for. But none of them are wrong.
Right, the hip flexors versus the abdominal.
Exactly. Now, in coordination per se, if you use coordination in a classical way, it's all the way in, all the way out. Knees are in, they extend, you hold breath, you open legs, close legs, and you bend in, you exhale. You lift higher than you exhale.
Frogs. I was taught this, I like to come in more because it feels better, especially with my training, it was don't go past the hips.
Yeah. I go all the way.
But the knees past the hips to avoid getting your hip flexors.
I go all the way in. But when I'm key in frogs, when I am key and very picky on, is the knees opened only shoulder way. There's nothing that bothers me more than the frog with the knees completely like an open.
Yeah.
And I think the knees was also just a cue for the sacrum to stay down, so if somebody's tight and they pull their knees too far in, then their lower back lifts.
Yeah.
And that would be.
She's absolutely right. So your knees go as far in as your sacrum stays on the mat. So if you're super flexible, I have a very flexible lower back. I can bring my knees all the way here and that sacrum stays. But if I see her and her sacrum lifting, I would ask her to keep the knees at 90 in the front. But I'm more interested again in the knees opening only shoulder width.
And then on that same note, people are doing feet straps too. I know you said that you don't like to cue tailbone. I usually always say try to anchor your tailbone onto the mat, but would you anchor your sacrum onto
That's what I think is
correct.
Yeah.
Sacrum.
Tailbone is not wrong, by the way, not wrong at all. I just don't cue it because not everybody feels it the same way. And it doesn't have nerve endings. So nobody can really, but the sacrum does, so you're always gonna feel this big flat, it's there, like you can't miss it. So just because of that, but it's not wrong to cue the tailbone. Okay, guys, really quickly, the nervous system that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about.
So we're sleeping the pelvic floor?
We kind of talked about it. Huh? We talked about it.
I think you had went on the phone. I'm sorry, it was, we had a nap crisis.
Don't worry, nap crisis for the baby is important. No. Okay. The reason I wanted you to have a little bit of nervous system in your, and if you go like 10 minutes over or 10, if you have to leave, do it, it's fine. Pilates is, like I said a couple of hours before, it's a neurological exercise. It works, when we say mind-body connection, it's not just a holistic term, it's a real thing. You're connecting the mind and the body to work, okay? So your nervous system is your body's command center, right? It orchestrates movement, sensation, coordination. It's a cornerstone for Pilates practice. So Pilates instructors should know a little bit about the nervous system. Overview. It's divided in two main parts, guys. The CNS, central nervous system. It's the brain and your spinal cord. Okay, that responsible for movement, muscles, etc. The PNS, peripheral nervous system. It includes nerves outside the CNS and it connects the brain and spinal cord to your muscles. So it connects everything. Connects to the organs, sensory sensation. That PNS is divided in somatic nervous system, controls all voluntary movement. You know, touch, position, all of it. Automatic nervous system regulates involuntary movement, like your heart rate or your breathing.
Why is it relevant to Pilates?
The somatic nervous system is the most relevant because it's voluntary movement and sensory feedback. The other one influences breathing, so we need both. Now, in motor control is anything movement. The nervous system needs to coordinate muscles to produce smooth movement. So Pilates, and this is something you know, but you should refresh it in your mind, emphasizes controlled, intentional movement, relying on your nervous system to activate specific groups, while inhibiting other muscle groups. What am I saying about? I'm not just grabbing the weight and doing bicep curls. I'm doing an integrated workout. I'm having that person do a bicep curl while I'm cueing that person to tuck the pelvis further a little bit, to bring their abs in, to open the chest, bend the knees while they're doing the bicep curl. So I'm activating the regular movement, the easy part, and then concentrating on all the other stabilizers that are not moving. That's what makes Pilates a mind-body connection. Because you have to have relevance to all the rest of your body while you're moving. Sometimes I even tell my clients in Pilates, sometimes it's even more important the structures that are not moving than the ones that actually move. Questions in that? That brings me to the concept of proprioception, and that is key for you as instructors. That's going to make a difference in your classes and how you treat your clients. Proprioception is also called the sixth sense. You heard that expression, right? It's the body's ability to sense its position, movement, and orientation in space, mediated by the nervous system. So, if I stand with no shoes, I will activate my muscles differently than if I stand with shoes. If I walk in the sand, I will activate differently as if I walk in a flat surface. So depending on where I'm standing, where my proprioception is, I will activate my muscles differently. That was the example I gave you with the planking. Remember that I said, you know, depending how you place your hands, your anchor point, the rest of the plank is gonna be different. You're either gonna dump into the joint or you're gonna come away from the joint. That is proprioception, is how different you make the support for the rest of the movement. If you feel, proprioception is also a technique. If you feel like your client is not understanding the plank situation, to give that as an example, you change the proprioception. Maybe you change the hand to a forearm plank. Maybe you change the mat to a foot bar. So you change where the support is coming from. You change the proprioception. That way, your client is maybe getting the information better because her nervous or his nervous system works differently. Does that make sense? Now, Pilates enhances proprioception through slow, controlled movements, and precise alignment. So Pilates works your proprioception with your mind-body connection. If you're too not concentrated and just doing it too quickly, you won't even notice what the proprioception. If you're focused on how many weights you're carrying, and I'm carrying like, I'm sorry, but the weighted magic circle that just gives me anxiety, then you're just focusing on the weight, you're not focusing on the exercise. Now grab the magic circle that weighs like half a pound, then you're really working, because you're engaging, you're not relying on the weight. So it's two different things on this one.
What is your advice on, so what I'm hearing is that proprioception essentially means that everybody's unique and therefore you need to sort of accommodate based on the nervous system that person has so that they can understand the movement.
Correct.
Is it the goal also for that client to eventually get to the proper sort of standard form?
Yes.
So what's your advice on sort of accommodating versus also pushing the client to feel and understand that ideal position?
That's a good question. That goes to, what is your goal as a Pilates instructor? To progress your clients. So I'm giving them different tools, different exercises, different apparatuses, so they can get to the goal that I want. I want them to feel strong in the plank, because this is what we're talking about at the moment, the plank, right? So I'm gonna make the plank in different apparatuses, different proprioception work, until they're strong enough to go to a regular planking situation. So I'm gonna progress them until they get there. I'm gonna work more abs, I'm gonna work more stabilizing movements, I'm gonna work more balance. So I'm gonna create a lesson plan for them to be able to get there. But yes, you wanna progress them there. You don't wanna keep them modifying all the time. If not, well, we can start talking about contemporary Pilates and classes. But yeah, you wanna help them, but you don't wanna change it completely. You wanna take them to get better and better. Yeah? Okay. Two more things and you're out of here, promise. But if you have to leave, please go, no worries. Mind-body connection and Pilates. That's key for us as Pilates instructors. The mind-body connection is the hallmark of Pilates. It emphasizes conscious awareness of breath alignment in our bodies. So Pilates requires mental focus to coordinate the breath, the core, the precise movements, and the strengthening of neural connections between brain and body. That's a lot of words to just say. You want to focus to understand the movement in your body. Have you ever had a client that you teach them and maybe they say, well, I don't understand. I didn't get anything from that. Pilates is just like, I'm not getting it. There's still not that mind-body connection. It'll get there, but it takes a little bit of work to connect the mind to the muscle part. Some people have a mind-body connection that's intact. It's like from day one. And some people just don't have it, and that's you as an instructor. That's your challenge, to make them connect that mind-body work. Apparatus helps us also with that. The springs help us. All the different work that we do helps us with that. Mindful movement also reduces stress via parasympathetic activation, promoting relaxation. So in exercises like a spine stretch, for example. So we also work that in our system. We're working on relaxation of your nervous system. Have you ever heard clients say, when I go to Pilates, I just feel so good? Because you're working the relaxation of the nervous system, not necessarily a stretchy feeling. It's just your nervous system that you're bringing down to a balance. The beauty of that is that when you balance your nervous system, for us women, you balance also your hormones. Hence why we feel so good with Pilates. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody should have Pilates, men, women, whatever they are, whatever gender, 76 genders, all of them. But The hormone balance happens because of that mind-body connection. So that's why your work is much more than just muscle work. Now, instructors can foster the mind-body connection also by using that imagery. We always have these stories and these images of, I don't know, if you study Pilates for many years, you've heard all those like, you bring your abs in and out like you're in a, I don't know, those stories that are like the marble to create the neutral spine that goes from your navel to your bone and doesn't move. Have you ever heard or read about those? And they take like 10 minutes to say. All those imageries help with that mind-body connection. Now, clients with stress or distracted minds may struggle with coordinating, and instructors can use grounding techniques. And then lastly, guys, breath and movement coordination. Breath is a core principle of Pilates, synchronized with movement to enhance control, oxygen delivery, and core stability. The nervous system regulates the breath. So one is completely engaged with the other. The last thing I want to be aware, and that brings us to the breathing, which is the end of our workshop today, is the muscles related in your breathing connected to us to Pilates. It's going to be your diaphragm and your intercostal muscles working together to activate core, to bring your nervous system to a balance. That's why we cue breath and very certain specific exercises. Now, there is a specific way of breathing. We have different patterns in Pilates and we work with them and we use it to challenge our clients in a more advanced level. But there is a very specific breathing called the lateral breathing, which is the one main breathing that we use for core engagement. It's called thoracic or ribcage breathing. It's a hallmark of Pilates. So always know that, make note that it exists. It's designed to maintain core engagement. It oxygenates the whole body. So the diaphragmic breathing, it's your belly breathing. You see it a lot in yoga. It's a from the belly. Okay. That one relaxes the abdominals and gives you a relaxation kind of sense. But our lateral breathing in Pilates is a little bit different. It's contracting the diaphragm and external intercostals to lift the ribs laterally, and then relaxing to bring the ribs into the midline. So it's a complete different, it's not a relaxation of the belly. We're actually breathing, but we're keeping the belly in. So yeah, so that's our difference. Exactly. It's lateral breathing of the ribcage.
That's what about this breathing. That's what all the trainers are saying, that this is the eyeball.
So Joseph was he was very much into the breathing and very obsessed with the exhalation. He did a lot of very strong exhalations. So most of his exercises emphasize the exhalation longer than you can do. And he trained a lot of like smokers and people that were dealing with that kind of thing. So a lot of his exercises were chest expansion, holding the breath in coordination, holding the breath when you do chest expansion, breathing exercises with the rollback bar, that kind of thing. And exhaling all the way up to strong, like you just said. Yes, so that's part of our breathing too. But our breathing emphasizes on that midline and the ribs coming into the midline and out of the midline, more than down and up. Okay? Okay, guys, any questions? And I'll give you my email, you have my number, if you have any questions that come up after as we do this, or if you want more information on that and you want a little bit more of a guide, a longer guide from that I have, I can email you something. So feel free to contact me with any questions, anything you want to know about it. That goes with you guys too.
Thank you.
Okay, can we all take first, before you leave, a big picture of all together, and then I'll let you go.
can I just add while we take a picture? So I have read a study that, the start of our work that it's fourth series of footwork. And majority of people think that footwork is just like a warming up exercise, but apparently in reality, while we are doing it, it is exactly the nervous system and feet connection that prepares us fully for the body, and we create a new neurological pathways while doing that. That's very smart exercise.
The footwork.
Yeah.
And going on that, I strongly believe that every class should start with footwork.
I think that's what everywhere they do, like, what particular places they all.
And you usually do what, the breath work before?
Or breath work.
No, before.
Bye.
How will bring a picture?
Well, there's a picture here with Mr. Bones, somebody who takes it, somebody that's good for pictures. You.
Next one.
Are you wanting me to put it on it like a timer?
I guess, maybe.
Thank you, guys. Well, maybe we can add the.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, call me, or text.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Really
Bye.
good. Thank you.
So I can put it on here.
And how do we stop them?
But then I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Now I will just.
Yeah, exactly.
Very fortunate.
Oh, still there.
I have like stretching.
Oh,
I'm not like that.
Today